But like I said to her then, it was just a taste. Just one little sip of her skin and no more. I'd have more in time. First, she'd have to learn to stop hating me and learn to love the way I made her feel. We crossed the street and stepped past the black wrought iron fence that circled the park. We moved down the brick sidewalk with its canopy of large shade trees and the benches that lined either side. I was right to expect a big crowd, and most benches were taken up. There was a guy doing the fake statue thing as we came toward a large clearing, and another guy playing a violin for tips. I ignored them and moved further into the park, taking the central spoke that cut toward the other side. There, sitting on a bench directly in the center, was Vlas himself. I slowed down and checked my back. Stephen and Ryan were lingering not far away, leaning up against a low concrete wall. They pretended not to be paying attention, but they were pretty obvious. I had other guys scattered all over the park, and most of them did a better job at blending in. I knew Vlas would have hidden men as well, and I forced myself not to try and pick them out. "Don't talk," I said to her, turning away from Vlas so the man couldn't read my lips. "Don't tell him anything. Do you understand?" "Yes," she said, eyes flicking past me toward the Russian. "Is he dangerous?" "Very. Keep your mouth shut." I reached up and pulled her chin toward me. "You're going to listen to me, aren't you?" "Yes," she said, anger flashing in her eyes. "Good girl." I released her and turned back toward Vlas. I led Ada over to him, and he smiled at our approach. He was my age, early 30s, with a square jaw and a wide, crooked nose that had been broken more than once. His eyes were ice gray, and his blonde hair was buzzed down to stubble. He wore a black t-shirt, jeans, and basketball sneakers, and he didn't look much different from any civilian in the area. But I knew Vlas, maybe better than anyone else did. We grew up together, though we grew up in different worlds. He was Russian mob from birth, but I didn't find myself in the Leone family until later on. We knew each other in school, though, and were friends for a time when we were just kids. But our worlds pulled us apart, and our familiarity turned us into enemies, slowly but surely. "Thanks for coming," he said without a hint of accent. "I appreciate you showing up on short notice. And you brought the girl with you." I nodded once. "I was ordered to show up," I said. "If I had my choice, the next time you saw me would have been at the end of a gun." Vlas laughed. "I don't blame you at all. Come on, take a seat." "I'd rather not." "You know, your standing only makes me uncomfortable." "Good." I stared at him, and he just smiled. "All right then, fine. Have it your way." He slowly stood up and stretched his back. "You know, Dante, I liked you better before you were a capo. You were no bullshit back then, know what I mean?" "Sure. I wouldn't have waited for orders before hitting back." "Exactly." He grinned at me. "But here you are with your little girl, obeying your commands like a good soldier. What do you want, Vlas?" "Let's talk terms." He lingered a few feet away, a smile on his face. He clasped his hands behind his back. "Terms?" I snorted. "I don't follow. You're finished with this already? I killed 2 of your guys and you're done?" He tilted his head, grinning. "Oh no. Terms for you, my man. Terms for your surrender." I laughed, unable to help myself. "And why the fuck do you think I'd surrender anything to you?" "Because we both know you aren't winning this," Vlas said. "I have more men and more guns, and I'm not constrained by a Don that's unwilling to spill blood." "I don't know, that's not the rumor I've heard. I hear your boss is pretty goddamn pissed about what you pulled." He waved that away with a casual flick of his wrist. "I think you might have heard wrong then. My pecan is willing to let his brigadiers do their jobs. What do you think your job is? I grunted. Killing you and taking your territory. He smiled, teeth flashing in the sunlight. Come now, Dante. You know how this goes. We've been at peace for too long. Sooner or later, our businesses are going to clash. Makes no sense, I said. There's no profit in killing each other. Maybe not for you, he said, then his eyes moved over to Ada. He tilted his head to the side and looked at her body, top to bottom. From other men, I felt a sense of pride at their desire. But from Vlas, I wanted to rip his teeth from his skull and shove them through his chest. I didn't realize our girl was so beautiful. Don't speak to her, I said, stepping forward. Vlas looked a little surprised, but I caught a flash of fear in his eyes. I'd always been a step above him, always a little stronger, always a little faster. He was a hard man, but we both knew that I was harder in a fair fight. But that was the thing about Vlas. He didn't fight fair and never had. That was how he won so often, how he climbed through the ranks of the Bratva to become a celebrated brigadier. In his family, those underhanded tactics were celebrated, so long as they were successful. Tactics like ambushing a rival in the middle of the morning for no apparent reason. And yet, you dressed her up for me. I wanted you to see what I had, I said, and to know what you'll never touch. He snorted. Please. She's pretty, I'll give you that. And she's mine. His eyes moved away from her and locked back onto mine. Actually, that's what we're here to discuss. My jaw tightened. What? Her father fucked me, Vlas said, a bit of anger leaking into his voice. He embarrassed me and made me look weak. You took care of the little rat for me, which I do very much appreciate. But that wasn't enough. I need that girl. I need to show what happens to those that cross me. I want the city to know that when you steal from me, you're not the only one that gets punished. I break you and your family. I watched him for a long moment before laughing. I couldn't help myself. The notion was so absurd, so over the top that I just couldn't hold it in. No, Vlas, I said, shaking my head and grinning. That's just about the most pathetic thing I've ever heard. His smile didn't falter, but I saw the tension in his eyes. Other men that didn't know him so well might not have noticed, but I could see it plain as the clouds in the sky. This is not negotiable, he said. Hand me the girl and we can end this war now. No, I said. I wouldn't give her to you for anything. And beyond that, you tried to kill me, Vlas. You went too far. He shrugged and shook his head. What can I say, Dante? I wanted to get rid of my biggest threat in the city. You should be flattered. I'm angry, I said, keeping my voice low. I felt Ada stiffen next to me and shift closer, pressing her body against mine. I'm very angry, Vlas. This won't end until you apologize, give me concessions, or your whole brigade burns. Vlas clucked his tongue and shook his head. Such words, Dante. But I'm not the Chinese. I'm not disorganized rabble. I know what you are. I resisted the urge to spit. You really want to go to war for real over some girl? He looked at Ada and shook his head. I told you already, she's mine. He grunted and his smile began to waver. You're making a mistake. No, Vlas, you're the one that's making a mistake. I stepped toward him, and I saw out of the corner of my eye several men turn toward the two of us. I assumed they were Vlas's Boyeviks, though I knew my own soldiers were nearby and ready. Calling me out here, making threats, and assuming I'd back down was a very bad mistake. Maybe I've given you the wrong impression over the years, because I've been under orders to keep tensions from boiling over. But hear me now, you little fuck. I leaned even closer. You tried to kill me, and worse, you almost hurt her. So I'll cut your throat before I back down. I stared at him, breathing hard, rage filling my body. I wanted to strangle Vlas then and there, but I knew there was nothing to gain from it. His men would pull me off him in an instant, and we'd all end up murdering each other. Vlas took one step back. All right then, Dante, that's your answer. He turned away. You can have war then. Wait. I turned to Ada. Her eyes were wide, and I felt a stab of rage. I'd told her not to speak, but she took a step toward Vlas. He hesitated and looked back. His head tilted, and a smile slipped across his lips. Yes, thief's girl. She flinched at that. You can't do this. My father's dead. He paid the price. Just, why are you doing this? Ada, I hissed. Vlas only turned and laughed. He continued walking, melting into the crowd. Ada stepped like she meant to walk after him, but I grabbed her arm and pulled her back toward me. An older couple wearing matching hats and t-shirt frowned at me, but I ignored them. I told you not to speak, I said. But you made me look weak. I pulled her back the way we had come. Stephen and Ryan fell back behind us as we moved past the buskers again. You made me look foolish. I wanted to help. You didn't. I clenched my jaw. He was feeling us out. That wasn't a real attempt at brokering peace. She stared at me, eyes wide. But I don't understand. Vlas is a clever shit, as much as I hate to admit that. He wanted to see how many men I'd bring and how committed to the fight I was. But now he learned two things he didn't expect. What? She asked softly. I released my grip on her arm but kept walking. She hurried to keep up. First, he learned that you're important to me, I growled. That was my mistake, and I'll own it. And second? I glanced at her and narrowed my eyes. He learned that I don't have control of you, and he's going to use that against me. She stared at me for a second, then her face tightened. You don't get to control me, you asshole. It's not like that, I snapped at her. I told you earlier today, it's about obeying orders. If you can't listen to me and trust me, how the fuck am I supposed to keep you safe? Hey, wait, she snapped, grabbing my arm and pulling me. I turned to her and stepped close. We stood on the sidewalk just outside of the park, right past the wrought iron gate. Fewer people were around, but an overweight man wearing a backpack and a hooded sweatshirt stared as he leaned against the fence a few yards away. I'm not one of your soldiers. You pulled me into this. You forced me into it. I didn't want any of this. I leaned closer and spoke in a rough, quiet voice. Stephen and Ryan lingered nearby, pretending not to listen. And yet you're in it, I growled. You chose to come here, and by coming, you agreed to obey. You didn't listen. Instead, you gave Vlas something to use against me, and now I'll pay that price. I stood up straight and stared at her. My heart hammered an angry rhythm in my chest, and she looked back at me, her eyes wide, and didn't speak for a long moment. I turned away before she had the chance to argue and continued walking back to the car. I heard her begin to follow a moment later. I was angry at her, but just as angry at myself. I never should have brought her with me. I knew that was a mistake the moment I considered it, and yet I went ahead and did it anyway. There was something in her eyes earlier. It was the way she dropped the towel willingly. I thought she'd obey, thought she could follow orders and do what was best for all of us, but instead she decided to speak up. This whole thing was fucked. I reached the car first. She came after me and looked at me without speaking, anger in her eyes. I opened the back door for her and she climbed inside and I shut it behind her. Ryan got in on the other side and sat next to Ada, while I sat shotgun and Stephen got behind the wheel. Nobody spoke for a moment as we sat in the car. "How'd that go?" Stephen asked. I snorted. "Great. Vlas wants war." Stephen nodded, his eyes staring straight ahead. "I'm guessing this was just to feel you out?" "Yes," I grunted, staring out the window. "And Ada?" "Wants to use her against me." Stephen grunted and shook his head. "Bad news?" "Fuck Vlas," I growled. "He wants a war, he'll get a war. I've already killed 2 of his men, and I'll gladly kill more." Stephen said nothing as he pulled the car into traffic. I caught sight of Ada staring at me in the side mirror, but I said nothing to her as Stephen drove us back to the Mount Airy house.
10. Ada. Stephen pulled the car up out front and dropped me off. Ryan got out and followed me up. Before I got inside, the window rolled down and Dante called out my name. I turned and looked back. "Don't go anywhere," he said, barely concealing his rage. "Stay inside for now. I'll be back tonight." I nodded, and he gave me one more look before Stephen pulled out and the car disappeared down the block. I lingered on the front porch for a moment until Gino opened the door. "Come on," he said softly. "Let's get inside." I let out a breath and followed him in. For the rest of the day, I kept playing that meeting in my mind. I kept seeing the way Dante reacted to Vlas, and the way the Russian man seemed afraid of Dante, but also willing to provoke him so aggressively. I couldn't understand any of it at the time, and it still bugged me all through the day. But the one thing I kept coming back to again and again was Dante's willingness to protect me. There was no hesitation in him. It surprised me. I expected him to at least consider Vlas's offer, but he never once paused. I don't know what I am to Dante, how I could possibly be worth going to war over, but that seems to be what he was doing. Dante was willing to go to war over me, and that scared me almost as much as it excited me. The idea that I was worth killing for, or dying for, it never occurred to me. I'd never known someone that cared about me like that. Not my father, not my friends, nobody. I'd always been alone, always gone through my life looking out for myself with the assumption that nobody else would do it for me. And now I was at my most vulnerable. I was living in the house of the man that killed my father, a violent and intense Mafia capo, and I was always in danger. And yet, I felt like someone cared about me for the first time in my life. It was a strange, impossible tension. That same sort of tension grew inside of me every time I thought about the way I felt for Dante. Both lust and hate, desire and destruction. Evening fell on Dante's house, and I spent most of it in front of the TV. Gino sat on the front porch, reading magazines and smoking cigarettes. I made him some tea, and he smiled and thanked me for it, but his eyes never lingered on mine. The more time we spent together, the more I realized that he was afraid of me, afraid of getting too close, afraid of crossing some imaginary line, which was sweet, really, as if he respected Dante too much to be anything more than my guard, not even my friend. I sat back down on the couch and turned the TV on, but couldn't bring myself to actually watch it. After a few minutes of mindless staring at the screen, I heard the door open and someone step inside. I looked over the back of the couch, figuring it was Gino coming in for some sugar or something for his tea, but instead an older gentleman in a sweater and a button-down shirt came hobbling into the room, leaning on a cane. I stood up, surprised. The old man smiled at me. He had a wrinkled face, large nose, drooping earlobes, and short gray hair. His sweater vest and shirt looked nice and clean, but old and worn. His slacks were loose, and he was about my height, though stooped with age. "Hello," I say. I'm sorry, are you looking for Dante?" He smiled. "I might be. And who are you?" "Ada," I said, coming around the couch. "Nice to meet you, Ada," he said, but didn't mention his name. "Dante isn't here right now. Did you see the man out front? Gino? Do you know Gino?" He waved a hand. "I know Gino," he said. "I've seen him around. He said you might offer me some tea if I came inside." I frowned a little, and my eyes flicked over to the hallway. But Gino was still outside, which I found strange. This man must be some local neighborhood guy, and Gino figured I could use a little company. "Of course," I say, gesturing at the table. "Take a seat, I'll make you some. Black tea, milk, or sugar?" "Black would be nice," he said, and sat with a sigh. "Just a splash of milk, please." I reheated the water, poured it into a mug, and dropped the tea bag in. I let it steep for a moment before adding some milk, stirring and bringing it over on a small plate. "Thank you," he said, "but a little tip for next time. Don't reheat the old water. Fresh water is always the way to go." I blushed a little. "I'm sorry, I didn't know." "It's okay," he said, and smiled again. He did have a charming, confident smile, like a gentle grandfather. "So, Ada, sit down. Tell me how you know Dante." I took a seat across from him. "We met recently," I said, trying to keep it vague. He knew my father, and I'm staying with him for a while now." "Your father," the man mused. "How did Dante know your father?" "Business," I said. He nodded. "I see." "And are you from around here?" "Something like that." He took out his tea bag and sipped his drink. He smiled and nodded. "Very nice. Thank you for this." "Of course." I tilted my head at him as he leaned back in his chair. "Do you visit with Dante often?" "Not as often as I should," he said. "Dante is very independent. He doesn't like having anyone underfoot." I snorted. "That hasn't been my experience." The man raised an eyebrow. "Really?" "He likes to keep me close," I said, although I wasn't sure why I was telling this man about it. "Maybe a little too close?" The man laughed and seemed delighted. "That just means he likes you, my dear," he said. "I'll be honest and say I've known Dante for some time, and I've never known him to keep a woman around for long." I smiled a little. Can't say I'm surprised. "So consider yourself lucky." "I suppose I will." I leaned toward him. "I'm sorry, I just realized I never got your name." "Luciano," he said, and the name registered somewhere in my brain, but I couldn't quite place it. "It's lovely to meet you." "How long have you known Dante?" "Years," he said. "Years and years. I remember when he was a very young man." "Really? What was he like?" "Oh, headstrong," Luciano said and laughed. "Aggressive, smart, incredibly rude." I grinned. "I can see all that." "The rudeness he grew out of, for the most part, but everything else?" He gestured, waving a hand. "Not so much. But he's loyal and good to his people. Have you asked Gino out there much about his boss?" "No," I admitted. "Gino doesn't seem like he wants to talk to me." "Don't take it personally. Gino never wants to talk to anyone." Luciano laughed and sipped his tea. "Ask him about Dante sometime, though. Gino has an interesting story about his boss." I will. I frowned at him and tilted my head. How did you know that Gino worked for Dante? Luciano smiled at me and shrugged. Oh, just an educated guess, my dear. He shifted in his seat and checked his watch. I believe Dante is on his way as we speak, so if you want to ask any more about that man as a youth, you'd better ask now. My frown deepened. That name was still bugging me, and the way he spoke about Gino and Dante like he knew all about their lives as Mafia men was starting to bug me. This man wasn't what he appeared, but I didn't understand who he was or what he was doing in Dante's house. But my curiosity got the better of me. You said he hasn't kept any women around. Does that mean he's never had a girlfriend? Luciano laughed and absently swirled his tea. Not a girlfriend in the way you mean, no. Although I suspect he's had plenty of opportunities. Dante has been very popular for many years now. I wish I knew more to ask you, I admitted. Would you tell me a story from when he was younger? Something I can use against him? Luciano grinned at me and leaned closer. Something embarrassing, then. If you wouldn't mind. Nothing too bad, but he holds all the cards here, and it would be nice to have a little something to throw back at him. Luciano gave me a long, appraising look. Smart girl, he said. All right, then. I have a story that I know he wouldn't want me telling. I'm all ears. I leaned closer and felt a little flutter in my heart. When Dante was a boy, maybe 15 years old, he decided that he wanted to be a tough guy. He was tough back then, don't misunderstand me. But Dante believed he was something more than just a 15-year-old punk. So, one day, he decided he was going to steal from the police station. I laughed and shook my head. No way. Yes way. There's a police station near Fairmount, right behind a Wawa, and it was his intention to rob that place. What was he thinking? Luciano spread his hands. Truth be told, I don't know. He must have had some kind of plan because he seemed so confident when he told me the story later. But at the time, I thought the fool boy was insane. So what happened? Apparently, he stood outside of the precinct until some police came out. As the door was closing, he slipped inside. How he even made it that far, I'll never know, but he made it into the building and began to walk the halls. At first, nobody stopped him, probably assumed that he was someone else's responsibility. He somehow found an unlocked office, stepped inside, and proceeded to take several pens and notebooks from the bottom drawer of the desk, all with official Philadelphia police seals on them. You're lying, I said, laughing. No way! That's insane. It is. He says he made it about halfway out of the office before someone stopped him. He was arrested on the spot, and the cops threw the book at him. I think out of embarrassment more than anything else. Well, word reached me that a young, interesting, up-and-coming soldier had been arrested for trying to rob a police precinct, and I couldn't help but use some of my influence to get his sentence reduced. I paid his bail, got them to give him community service, and brought the boy into the fold after that. I stared at Luciano for a long moment. You got his charges dropped. I frowned a little. And brought him into the fold? The name was still swirling in my head as I stared at the man. He grinned at me ear to ear and sipped his tea as the front door opened. I heard 3 pairs of footsteps come stomping back into the room. Dante stormed in first, followed by Stephen and Gino. All 3 men looked anxious. and Dante immediately knelt down in front of Luciano and took the man's hand into his own. "Don Leone," he said, "I'm so sorry to make you wait. Gino told me you had arrived, and I hurried here as fast as I could." I gaped in horror as the truth hit me like a stone. Don Leone. I'd just been sitting and having tea with the head of the Leone crime family. Luciano Leone looked like any other old Italian man, and I'd simply assumed he was from the neighborhood, or maybe some childhood friend of Dante's. It never occurred to me that he could have been the head of the family, but looking back, I should have seen something right away. "Nonsense," Don Leone said. "I was just having tea with this nice young lady." I gaped at them as Dante turned his head toward me. "You were on your best behavior, I hope?" I didn't know he was. I stared as Don Leone began to laugh, and Dante frowned at me. "It's okay," Don Leone said. "There's no way she could have recognized me, Dante. I hope she was polite regardless." "Oh, she was. I told her the story about your little foray into burglary from when you were a boy." Dante winced. "You don't need to always tell that story." "But I love it so much, Dante. And to think you nearly got away with it." Don Leone extracted his hands and patted Dante on the cheek. Dante grimaced and sat down at the table, nodding at Stephen and Gino. The two men took positions at the edges of the room, and Dante leaned toward Don Leone. I could see the tension in Dante, clear as day. He was worried, and I'd bet anything that a visit from the Don of his family to his private home wasn't a normal thing. "Don Leone, what can I do for you today?" Dante asked. Don Leone sighed and smiled like he wished they could go back to talking about the old days. "You know why I'm here," he said. "I believe so, yes." "Word has reached me about your meeting with Vlas." "I hoped it would, sir." Don Leone studied Dante, and his face slowly fell from the kindly grandfather and transformed into something harder. In that moment, I saw the mobster hidden beneath the kindly exterior, and I realized why Don Leone was the head of the family. He was a chameleon, capable of shifting his shape and changing his true colors. One moment he was gentle and laughing, and the next he was diamond hard and razor sharp, a force to be feared. "Vlas didn't give you much choice in the matter, did he?" Don Leone said with a sigh. "He didn't, sir," Dante said. "I was told his demands were simple. He wanted the girl in recompense." Don Leone's eyes flashed to mine, then back to Dante. "And yet here she is, still in your home." "I wouldn't give him anything," Dante said. "I've given him enough. Any more would be weak." "I agree," Don Leone said. "And yet, you're willing to kill over this girl?" Dante looked at me, and I wished I could shrink away and disappear. The men were talking about me like I didn't exist anymore. Though Dante's eyes on mine made a spark come to life in my chest. "I would," he said. "I've come to value her, Don Leone." "Ah," Don Leone said, but didn't look at me. "Value her. That's an interesting choice of words. You wouldn't say that you love her." Dante tensed, then shook his head. "She was my prize from her father. He used her as a bargaining chip to try and sway my hand." "Didn't work, did it?" Don Leone smiled and shook his head. "And so you refuse to do the same thing her father did, I suppose?" "Yes, sir." Dante's jaw tensed. "I have lines." "I know all about your lines, Dante." Don Leone shook his head and sipped his tea. He was silent for a long moment, and I could sense the tension rolling off Dante in waves. I realized that he didn't know how his boss would react to how the meeting went, and he was afraid that the Don would disapprove. I didn't know what Dante could do if the Don told him to go back and give me to Vlas, and I didn't want to think about it. "Very well," Don Leone said at last. "I believe you did what was necessary. You gave Vlas the traitor thief and returned his money. You apologized and went to a meeting on his terms. And yet he demands more, which is unacceptable. I agree. Giving in would be a show of weakness, and I will not have weakness from one of my best capos." "Yes, sir." Dante inclined his head, and his eyes were burning with an interesting passion and rage. Don Leone pushed his chair back. Dante helped the man stand, though I didn't think he needed it. Don Leone looked at his capo for a long moment before shaking his head. "I'll approve of this war for now," he said. "Do what you believe needs doing. I will deal with that fool Maxim. The old pig can't allow his son to run wild, no matter what he might think. The boy doesn't own this city." "I agree, sir," Dante said. "How should I handle it?" "As I said, however you see fit. Try not to kill Vlas, but if you have to use violence against some of his men, then so be it." A strange look flashed across Dante's face. It was half excitement, half anger. He wanted to hurt some of those bastards, but he clearly resented the Don stopping him from going after Vlas directly. "Thank you, sir," he said. Don Leone patted Dante's arm. He took up his cane and the two of them moved to the door. They reached the hallway before Don Leone paused and looked back at me. "It was lovely meeting you, dear," he said. "I can see what Dante sees in you. Perhaps you're worth a war, or perhaps not. I suppose time will tell." He turned and began to walk again. Dante didn't look to me, only moved along with his Don in silence. I sat back in my chair and stared at the table for a long moment without speaking. Stephen walked past me and followed Dante and Don Leone outside. Gino lingered near the table, then gave me a smile. "Sorry," he said, his voice soft. "I should have warned you." I smiled back and shook my head. "I should have figured it out. Don Leone doesn't look like what you'd expect, but that man is something else. Don't let him trick you." I nodded a little, and he nodded back before heading down the hall, following the others. I sat there for another moment before getting up, walking over to the abandoned teacup, and taking it over to the sink. I rinsed it, put it in the dishwasher, then stared at my hands. The idea that I could be worth going to war over, it made my heart beat hard in my chest. I didn't want war. Nobody had to die on my account. My father already lost his life, and the idea that Dante might put himself or any of his men in danger for me made me want to vomit in my mouth. I hated the position they were putting me in, like I was some object they had to guard at all costs. But I didn't know what else to do, because in the end, Dante thought I was worth it, and I didn't think I could change his mind. Or if I really wanted to.
11. Dante. There was a light drizzle as I leaned back into the leather seat of my SUV. Stephen sat behind the wheel, his gun in his lap, frowning down the block. Ryan and Biagio sat quietly in the back seat, not speaking with each other, just staring out the window. I watched water trickle past in the gutter, running over trash and half-chewed gum before disappearing down a storm drain. Nobody moved on the sidewalks, though the neon-colored signs of the bars on this block still glowed, despite it being past 1 in the morning. I could taste the storm, and my blood pumped excitement with each heavy beat of my heart. "They ready?" I asked Stephen. He nodded. "Parked a half hour ago." "Good." I lifted my own weapon, a simple Glock, dependable and efficient. I checked the slide, made sure the magazine was full, and leaned against the window. Shit night for it. Or a good night, depending on how you see it. I grunted a little and shrugged. We were on some beat-up block in South Philly on the edge of my territory, just over the dividing line. There were crumbling, boarded-up houses on the left, brick fronts and gray concrete stoops leading to red doors. On the right were shops, some closed, but most full. There were a couple of restaurants, one Mexican place that was open late, one coffee joint that had been closed for hours, and a few bars stretching down to the corner. Drunk college kids liked to come around here and wander from the Mexican place into one of the dives a few doors down, but it looked like nobody wanted to be out in the rain, which was a blessing in some ways. I watched the door of our target without a word. The sign read Maxi Bar in bright red neon, though the windows were papered over with black, and a lone bouncer sat out in front of the door. He looked bored and kept checking his phone, like he didn't expect much to happen. He hadn't noticed us, not in the hour we'd been sitting in the car, just waiting. "Make the call," I said. Stephen nodded, picked up his phone. He tapped the screen and the phone rang. Someone answered on the other side. "We're going," he said, then hung up. I watched out the window for a long moment until I saw a black truck parked at the far end of the block open up. 4 men spilled out wearing dark jackets and hooded sweatshirts, their hoods pulled up. I looked at Stephen and nodded. "Come on," I grunted and opened the door. The others followed, Stephen first, then Ryan and Biagio. I took point, walking fast. I knew 2 more guys were in the alley behind the club, posted up there in case shit went bad. I reached the bouncer first. He looked up and frowned. I caught blue eyes, blonde hair, a square jaw, and a nose that looked like it had been broken and reset 50 times over his life. He grunted something and stood, but I slammed the butt of my pistol down against his shoulder. He growled in pain, and Ryan shoved him down to the ground. I heard Ryan kick the man in the ribs, but I was already shoving in through the door, Stephen and the others hot on my heels. There was a short, dark hall, maybe 5 feet at most, that ended with a door on the left. I threw it open, and music rolled out, heavy and thumping, more of a vague beat than an actual song. I stepped into the room and scanned it quickly, taking it all in like a sponge. Black lights lit a stage at the far end, and a girl was dancing topless, her panties glowing that strange neon green. There was a bar on the right with some men sitting at it, and tables in the center of the room, most of which were empty. Girls lounged around, and one was giving a lap dance in a booth directly across from the door. The floor was sticky as I stepped further in, letting my crew fill up the room behind me, as every eye in the place turned to stare at us. The bartender was a thin, older man with long, graying hair, a plain black shirt, and plain black pants. He staggered backwards as I stalked over toward him, my gun out. "On the fucking floor," I barked. "On the fucking floor now." One of the guys in a dark blue button-down shirt and light jeans stood up and reached behind him for something in his waistband, but I reached him before he could draw. I pounded my fist into his throat, grabbed his wrist, and spun him around. A gun clattered onto the floor, and I kicked it away as I raised my weapon at the other men at the bar. One was short with a black t-shirt and khaki cargo pants, and the other had on a camo tank top and jeans. They were reaching for their own guns, but my guys were flooding into the space, kicking over chairs in a clatter. "Don't fucking move," I growled at the guys, and they paused as Stephen appeared beside them. The camo tank top guy got cracked in the skull with Stephen's pistol, and the other got Biagio's fist in his jaw hard enough to slam his head into the bar. Biagio kicked the guy as he slumped onto the floor, and Stephen threw the camo guy over the bar. His body smashed into bottles and made the bartender stagger away. I kicked my guy in the back of the knees, then shoved his face toward the floor. He hit hard, and I knelt down on his back, grabbed his hair, and slammed his face down once, twice. I stopped when I saw blood leaking from his mouth and nose, a groan escaping his lips. The girl on the stage screamed as she tried to cover her chest. She moved away and ran backstage as my boys threw the rest of the men on the floor. The guy getting a lap dance tried to run, but Ryan caught him and punched him in the ribs. "Cover them," I said to Biagio and the others. Stephen came with me as he stormed into the back. The bartender was huddled down behind the bar, hands over his head, not trying to move. I ignored him as I stomped down a back hall and kicked open a door. The first one was a bathroom. The second one was a dressing room for the girls. 3 chicks were huddled in the corner, clearly terrified. "Don't fucking move," I said to them. "You'll be fine." I ducked back out as Stephen kicked open a door. He flipped on the light as I swept the room with my gun. "Nothing," I grunted. We cleared the rest of the bar. There was a kitchen with 2 guys that didn't speak English cooking fried food, a storeroom, a walk-in refrigerator, and nothing else. No sign of Lass, no sign of his other men. "What do you think?" Stephen asked me. I shook my head and opened the back door. Cosimo and Chad twitched, their guns at the ready, but I held up my hand. They were standing in a cramped alleyway, garbage strewn on either side of them. "Stinks back here," I grunted. "No kidding. How's it in there?" Cosimo asked. "Not bad. Stay here, keep ready. We're almost done." I went back inside and headed into the office. I flipped on the light, walked to the desk intending on ripping it apart, but stopped in my tracks. I stared down at a knife stabbed through a photograph of Ada. It was stuck right in the middle, nothing else around it, and clearly it was meant to be found. "Stephen!" I barked. He came running. "Found something?" I gestured at the picture, the taste of bile in my mouth. He stared at it before pulling the knife, slipping it into his belt and picking up the picture. "She looks good in this," he said. "Probably from her Instagram." "How?" I asked him. "It's the same club her father robbed. Maybe he was ready. Or maybe someone talked. I doubt it." I let out a growl. "Tear through here. Find me some money." I walked back into the main room and found my guys covering everyone, their guns out. I walked up to the first guy, the one I'd taken down, and dragged him to his feet. I pushed him against the bar and shoved my gun against his skull. "Where's Vlas?" I asked. "Fuck you," the guy said, his voice thick with a Russian accent. "Mudak." I pressed the gun harder against him, letting it dig into the skin of his temple. He winced and glared at me, but I felt him trembling under my hands. "Where is Vlas?" I asked again. "I don't know," he said. "Do you know who I am?" "Duh." "Then you know your boys tried to kill me already, but 2 ended up dead in the street. I won't hesitate to kill another one of you to get what I want. Now, where is your fucking boss?" He stared at me, his eyes wide. "I don't know," he said again. "I swear I don't. He told us to wait here. Been 3 nights. No Vlas, no show up. We sit, watch girl, drink vodka. That's all. I don't know." I clenched my jaw and let him go. I slapped my gun across his face and felt teeth break from his jaw as blood splattered on the bar. He toppled to the floor, moaning, and I wiped the barrel of my weapon clean on my shirt. "We're done here," I barked. "If any of you see Vlas, tell him I'm coming. Tell him his little games aren't going to stop me." I turned and stormed toward the back. I heard my guys kicking and hitting their targets before following. Stephen came out of the office, shaking his head. "Empty," he said. "Fuck." I kicked open the back door and we piled out into the alley. Cosimo led the way through the stinking trash and back onto the sidewalk. We split up then, and I went back to the original SUV with Stephen on my tail. We got in the front, waited for Ryan and Biagio, then pulled back into traffic. "Fuck, fuck, fuck," I growled, slamming my hand against the dash. "That fucking picture of Ada. He knew I'd show up. That was goddamn bait. But it wasn't a trap, Steven said, his voice soft. Those guys, they were just hung out to dry. Vlas didn't set a trap. I don't think he knew when you'd show up, just that you would sooner or later. I clenched my jaw as rage flowed through me. The picture of Ada kept flitting through my mind, and I thought about her back home waiting for me. Drop these two off, then take me to her, I growled to Steven before staring out the window again. The windshield wipers flashed in a steady rhythm, and I glared at the night. My bloodlust was up, and I knew there was only one way to sate it. Killing a man or fucking a woman. I hadn't killed anyone, and I knew only one woman I wanted. Fucking Ada. I don't know what Vlas's game was, but he managed to escape me. I wanted to hit that club, hurt some of his guys, steal from him, and send him a message. I wanted to do it in the same place her father hit the first time, the place that set all this off. But Vlas saw that coming. I don't know how, but he saw it. Fucking hell. Fucking Ada. I clenched my jaw and kept silent the rest of the drive back.
12. Ada. I sat out on the front porch with my legs drawn up underneath me. Gino was inside, asleep in front of the TV, and he didn't realize I'd stepped out to watch the rain. I knew I probably should stay indoors, but I couldn't help myself. I'd been cooped up so long, and I couldn't sleep. I watched the water drip off the overhang. The neighborhood was quiet, most of the houses dark. It was late, well after 1 in the morning. The streetlight cast about a weak yellow, and shadows drooped across the sidewalk. I stared up at the sky as the rain continued to drip off the eaves, and I pictured Dante out there somewhere, getting into trouble, getting himself killed because of me. Sleep just wouldn't come. I couldn't calm my mind down. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Dante at work, fighting because of me, getting hurt because of me. The idea of him breaking skulls or killing in my name made my spine crawl. But even worse was the idea of him or any of his men getting injured. I wanted to scream, but I knew that wouldn't help. As I stared at the street, I saw a car turn onto the block. I frowned a little and watched it, surprised to see a car out so late on this quiet little street. It slowly crept toward the house, and my pulse spiked as it pulled up front. I stood up, panic racing through me, and I wanted to run inside and wake up Gino. If it was the Russians, if it was Vlas here to take me away, I couldn't do a thing about it. Instead, the passenger side door opened and Dante stepped out into the rain. He said something into the car, then shut the door. It pulled away, leaving him down on the sidewalk. He was wearing a black shirt tucked into his usual dress pants. There was a dark brown smear on his side, and his hair was dripping wet, like he'd already been outside. He stared up at me, and I could almost feel his body's tension from 20 feet away. Slowly, he came up the steps. I backed away as he reached the porch and moved toward me, his eyes on my body. I was suddenly aware of my low-cut tank top and my short shorts, just enough to cover my ass, but barely. I was dressed for bed, not for visitors. He stopped and didn't speak for a long moment, and I felt my heart racing. "Are you okay?" I asked. "I didn't think you'd be up," he said. "Dante?" I bit my lip. "Is that blood?" He looked down at himself. He seemed surprised for a moment. "Not mine," he said, then met my eyes again. "You shouldn't be out here." "Couldn't sleep." He nodded. I crossed my arms under my chest. I couldn't meet his gaze, couldn't look at him. He was sucking in the light all around him like a black hole. He was too beautiful, too deadly, and too terrifying. I didn't want to know where he'd been or what he'd been doing. I knew it was bad, knew it was deadly, and that was more than enough already. "Come here," he said, his voice low and commanding. I turned back toward him despite myself. "I shouldn't," I whispered. "I should still hate you." "You're right." He didn't smile, but he did tilt his head. "I killed your father. You should despise me. I'm a sick man, aren't I?" "Dante," I said, a choked whisper. "You should fucking hate me." He stepped closer. "You should want me dead. And yet you don't. And yet you stay here, stare at my body, wonder when I'll finally take you. Isn't that right?" "No," I whispered, but I knew he was right. "You like being my captive. You like being my little bride. I think you secretly want to stay here. I think you'd stay even if your life wasn't in danger." "I wouldn't. You don't know me." "I know you enough." He stepped closer and I stepped back until I ran up against the closed door. He pinned me there, moving fast. He grabbed my wrist tight in his hand and pressed it up above my head. I gasped as he grabbed my other wrist and made it join the first. He was big, so big and strong, and his body could easily dominate mine. The thought sent a chill of excitement down my spine. "What are you doing?" I whispered. "I'm doing what you've been too afraid to do," he growled in the night. "You've been in my home watching me, lusting for me, begging me to take your body, even though you keep pretending like you hate me. I'm a monster, a killer, and you know it. But what does that say about you, little Ada, when all you want from this monster is a thick cock between your legs and a tongue in your mouth?" I gasped and let out a little moan, despite myself. He hadn't kissed me yet, hadn't touched me beyond pinning me to the door. "I don't know what I want," I admitted, hating myself for the words. His smile set my body on fire. Water dripped from the ends of his wet hair as he tilted his head. His shirt was plastered to his muscular chest, damp and see-through. "I do," he said, "and I'll take it from you." He pressed his lips against mine, and I took a sharp breath in through my nose, kissing him back, basking in the taste of him. Some voice deep in the back of my mind wanted me to pull away, wanted me to fight back and stop what was happening. Some stupid, stupid voice wanted me to walk away and remember what this man did to my father. I ignored that voice. He kept me pinned to the door, his body pushing against mine. I breathed hard through my nose and moaned into his kiss. His lips pulled away, and he released my wrists with one hand, but kept them pinned with the other, pressing my body hard against the wooden door. He moved his free hand down to my hair and pushed it from my neck, kissing me there and pulling my hair tight. I gasped, moaned his name, whispered it like a prayer. "That's right," he growled in my ear. "Go ahead, say my name. I know you've been yearning to say it in the night. Whisper it like there's nothing better in the world." "Bastard," I groaned, and bit his lower lip. He growled and pulled my hair. "Good. I like it when you don't give in all the way. Go ahead and pretend like you don't want this." I stared fire at him, my knees trembling, my body weak. I was dripping wet, and I couldn't keep denying what my body was telling me. I jerked forward and kissed him. He pushed me back, crushing me, kissing me hard before releasing my wrists. I gasped as they fell down and wrapped around his neck. He opened the door and pushed me inside. I stumbled over the threshold. He came at me, the rain dripping out on the street. He slammed the door shut. I heard something in the other room, a movement, and I looked over my shoulder. Gino stood in the kitchen doorway. "Go home," Dante barked. I turned back to him, and he didn't take his eyes from me. "Go the fuck home, Gino." Dante stepped forward and grabbed me by the hips. He lifted me like I was nothing and threw me over his shoulder. I caught a glimpse of Gino grinning as he left the house, closing the door behind him. I hit Dante on the back. "Put me down," I hissed. "You asshole." "No," he said, and took me to the top of the house. He walked to the last bedroom, the master bedroom at the very back, and opened the door. I hit him on the back again, before he threw me down onto the bed. I hit the sheets with a gasp and stared up at him as he stood at the foot of the bed. I tried to scramble back, but he caught my ankle, his grip steel hard. My eyes skimmed the dark room and caught sight of a dresser, 2 nightstands. His blanket was gray and his sheets were dark blue. The headboard was large and padded and covered with light gray cloth. There was a painting of a bridge across a wide body of water hanging above the bed. I couldn't see more as he dragged me down the sheets toward him. I kicked out, not sure what I was doing, but he just caught my other ankle. He smirked and jerked me down to the edge of the bed. I gasped as he pinned my knees down with his right hand and grabbed my hair with his left, lifting me up to meet his lips. I kissed him, fell into that kiss like heaven, and tasted him for a long moment. He pulled back and kissed my neck. "If I let your knees go, are you going to hit me?" he whispered. "I don't think so," I said. "Good." He released me, and I considered it, but decided that would probably be a bad idea. It would kill the moment, but more than that, it might piss him off too much. He grabbed my hair tighter and kissed me before grabbing the hem of my tank top. He pulled it up and off, throwing it across the room. I had on an old black bra, frayed and going gray from age. He unhooked it, and I let it slide off as he cupped my breasts and kissed my chest. He shoved me back down onto the bed and pinned me there, holding my wrists again as he sucked my nipples and bit them. I moaned his name, and he kissed me hard. I felt him release one wrist as the other hand moved down my body, lingering on a nipple before it slid down the front of my little cotton shorts, down underneath my panties, and found my dripping wet pussy. I moaned and rolled my hips as he slid his fingers up and down my slit. He smirked and bit my lip hard as he pressed his fingers deep inside my pussy. I gasped from pleasure and pain, and he slid them back out to rub circles along my clit. "Tell me you want my cock," he whispered in my ear. "Tell me you want it deep between your legs." "Oh, God," I moaned. "You know what I am. You know what I do. And yet here you are, giving yourself to me. You're a dirty girl, little Ada. You're my filthy, dirty girl. Every inch of you is mine, and I'm going to claim my prize. Now tell me you want it." I stared into his eyes and knew he wasn't lying. I was his, every inch of me, and I wanted to be his prize. "I want it," I whispered, my voice soft and low. "Good girl." He bit my lip and ran his tongue against mine, before moving back off me and releasing my other wrist. His hand came out from my panties as he stood up at the end of the bed and took off his shirt. I watched him undress, one hand on my breasts, unable to help myself. I could feel my pulse between my legs, and his sheets were soft underneath me. I glanced away and saw a bathroom, a closet, a wardrobe. I looked back as he removed the shirt and threw it on the floor. He tilted his head to one side and took off his belt slowly, sliding it off and holding it in his hand. He reached down and grabbed my hair and turned me onto my stomach. I gasped as I looked over my shoulder. He brought the belt down hard on my ass. I gasped, shocked. I was still wearing my cotton shorts, but the belt still hurt. "What the fuck?" I whispered. He spanked me again with it and grabbed my hair harder. He kissed me before pushing my shorts aside, his fingers teasing my pussy from behind. I moaned and glared at him as he pushed them deep inside me. He dropped the belt and fucked me with his fingers. I wiggled my hips and he pulled back, growling in pleasure as he licked my slick wet from his fingertips. I watched him take off his pants, still on my stomach. I rolled over and leaned on one elbow as he stepped out. His body was muscular, covered in tattoos, and his thick, long cock strained against his black boxer briefs. I stared as he took those off, too, revealing his massive cock, straight and practically throbbing with every beat of his heart. I leaned forward and sat up. I took him in both my hands and looked up into his eyes as I stroked him top to bottom. He grabbed my hair and stared at me before pressing himself into my mouth. I moaned as he slid his cock into my throat. I gagged, pulled back, then took him again. I sucked him faster, licking the tip and tasting the pre-cum dripping down his shaft. My spit slid along his length, and I gathered it in my hands, stroking him as I sucked him faster, letting his cock slide into my throat and back out. I could barely fit his massive shaft, but I tried anyway. My breasts shook with every bob of my head, and I moaned as I sucked him faster and faster. God, I needed it. Needed his cock, wanted to taste his cum in my throat. But he pulled me back and kissed me before dropping to his knees. "Look at you," he whispered, taking off my shorts and my panties. "Pink and slick. Fucking beautiful." He kissed my pussy, then licked me top to bottom. "And delicious." "God, Dante," I whispered. "You're sick." "Sick?" He laughed. "It's not sick to love the taste of you, my little Ada." I bit my lip. I'd never had a man want me like that before. He licked me again, fingers sliding inside, tongue rolling along my clit. Pleasure bloomed like heaven all through my body as his fingers fucked deeper and his tongue worked faster, lapping my stiff clit up, making my hips work. But he pulled back and stood, stroking his massive cock. I leaned up on my elbows and stared at him as he grabbed my hips and pressed himself against me. I nearly choked as he teased my slick spot top to bottom with his heavy tip. And I wanted it. God, I wanted it, but I was so afraid. He smirked and leaned down. I thought he might kiss me. Instead, he pushed me back down on the bed and slid himself deep inside. I gasped, back arched as pleasure and pain ripped through me like lightning. The rain began to pound harder outside as he slid himself out and began to fuck me. I rolled my hips and took him deeper, deeper. He kissed me then, bit my lip, licked my nipples, bit them too. I growled and moaned my pleasure, taking him deep between my legs. He shoved me down and held me there, fucking me like a savage, taking me like he owned me. And he did. I was his prize, my body, my pussy, my pleasure. I screamed his name as he fucked me. He growled in response, grabbed my hair, slammed his cock deeper. His tongue slid into my mouth as his cock took me over and over, filling me to the brim, sliding slick between my legs. Pleasure drove me wild, drove me past the point of no return, and I knew I'd never be the same again. I didn't care. He turned me around and got me up on all fours. I kissed him over my shoulder as he knelt on the bed behind me. He slapped my ass hard, then slid himself deep inside. I threw back my head and gasped as he grabbed my hair and fucked me rough from behind, taking me like an animal. There was no hesitation, nothing tentative, nothing gentle. He knew my flesh, and he wanted to take me, taste me, make me scream. I screamed. I begged his name. I bucked my hips and flailed back against him harder and harder, feeling every rough stroke, every thick slap of him against my ass. He spanked me, pulled my hair, and leaned forward to rub my clit as he whispered in my ear. "You're my little prize," he growled. "My little bride. I'm going to marry you, Ada. You might not want that now, but you will, my little darling. I'm going to marry my little bride." I moaned and rode his cock faster and faster. Sweat slicked my skin in bed as he spanked my ass harder. There'd be bruises all along my skin, and I didn't care. The thunder roared outside as he fucked me faster and faster. He grabbed my hair and bit my shoulder before shoving my face down against the comforter. He took me then, used my pussy like his toy, and ripped into me. His body was a monstrous mass of muscle and gorgeous tattoos, and I wanted every inch of it. I cried out my pleasure, and he knew I was close. I could see it in his eyes. He reached around my hip and rubbed my clit again, working it faster as he ground his massive cock deep between my legs. I gasped and took it, unable to move, unable to do anything but feel the pleasure tearing me to perfect pieces. I came hard on his massive shaft. I came and felt my world spiral into bits and nothing. Pleasure assaulted me, took me and left me nothing more than a puddle of sweat and drool. But he wasn't done. He fucked my pussy, teased my breasts, then slid his massive shaft out from inside of me. He stroked himself and pulled me down to him, sliding his cock into my mouth. I sucked him, tasting my pussy on his skin before he came deep into my throat. Just what I wanted. I swallowed every single drop, and when I was done, I looked up into his eyes as I licked my pussy off his still hard shaft. He was sweating, I was sweating. We collapsed onto his bed in a tangle of sheets and lust. He pulled me against his chest and held me there, and we didn't speak. I don't think there were any words. Not after what we'd just done. Not after that. I could only think one thing over and over again as I felt myself slipping towards sleep in his arms. He wanted to marry me. I was going to be his bride. I couldn't tell if I loved it, feared it, or was repulsed by it all. But I slept there, wrapped in his body, pleasure still pulsing through me, reverberating like a drum.
13. Dante. Ada was still asleep when I woke with the sun the next morning. I slipped from my bed and stared at her perfect skin, at her perky breasts and pink nipples. Fucking hell, I could still feel that tight cunt wrapped around my cock, her slick body writhing against mine. She took it and loved every inch of it, loved the way I manhandled her and used her for my pleasure. I felt my cock stir and had to pull myself away before I woke her up and make her suck my cock again. I slipped into the shower and rinsed off. When I was done, I stared at myself in the mirror for a long moment, going over the events of the night before. None of it made any sense. I came back out of the bathroom, intent on getting a suit from my wardrobe, but Ada was sitting up in bed. She wrapped a sheet around herself and stared at me. I tilted my head, naked and still damp, and I let her eyes move along my body. I smirked when she met my gaze again. "Sleep good?" I asked. She shrugged. I think I have bruises on my ass. Good. I walked to the dresser, found a pair of boxer briefs and a plain white undershirt, and pulled them on. Dante, she said. I looked up at her. What? Something happened last night. I frowned. I fucked you until you fell asleep. Or don't you remember having the best sex of your life? She blushed a little. That's not what I meant. Before you showed up, something happened. You had blood on your shirt. My eyes flicked over to the red-stained shirt lying on the floor. Damn, I said softly. I'll have to get rid of that. What happened? She pushed. I walked to the wardrobe pressed against the far wall. It was large and oak, an antique thing made 100 years ago in this city. It cost a goddamn fortune, but I loved the stupid thing. I opened the doors and smelled the wood as I picked out a suit and began to pull it on. She just kept watching me. I put my slacks on, buttoned up my shirt, tucked it in. I turned to her as I adjusted my cuffs and tilted my head. You really want to know my business? I think it has something to do with me, or else you wouldn't have... She trailed off. I snorted. I don't need an excuse to fuck you, Ada. No, but you were angry. I think you were taking something out on me. She bit her lip. Not that I'm complaining, but what happened? I watched her for a long moment. I thought back to that club, the blacklight, the men on the ground. I could feel my gun smash against that fuck's teeth again. I could see the bottle shake and fall over as my boys threw those dumb fucks over the bar. I hit Vlas back, I said. She nodded, not surprised. What happened? I stepped toward her, then sat down on the end of the bed. She moved over to me, the sheet dropping away to reveal one beautiful breast, her pink nipple hard again. I tilted my head toward her. We hit the strip club your dad robbed, I said. She frowned and ran a hand along the sheets, smoothing them out. Why? She asked. Wanted to send a message, I said. Let Vlas know that nothing was safe, even a spot he knew we might come after again. Did it work? No, I said. It didn't. He knew we'd be there. I don't know how, but he knew. She looked up, and her hair spilled over one shoulder as she adjusted the sheet to cover herself again. How do you know? He had a picture of you, probably from your Instagram profile. It was pinned to his desk with a knife, and his safes were all empty, no cash at all. She stared at me, and her face morphed into horror. I stared at her, keeping my face calm and neutral. I didn't want to scare her, but if she really wanted to be a part of my business, she was going to have to get used to things like this. Did you kill someone? Her voice sounded light and distant, like she was afraid to speak too loudly, or else her question would come true. No, I said. Nobody there was worth killing. I'm not stupid enough to spark off a full-scale war just because Vlas got one over on me. No, I roughed some motherfucker up, gave him a fat dental bill, but nobody died. She nodded once and looked relieved. What are you going to do? I'm not sure. I hesitated and leaned toward her. I'm afraid I have a rat in my gang. She bit her lip and narrowed her eyes. That can't be true. Your guys, they're all loyal, aren't they? I thought so, but how else would Vlas know we'd be there? I don't know. She took a sharp breath. Maybe he just guessed and left that picture there for days, hoping you'd show. I nodded slightly. That was my guess as well, and it was good to hear it come from her. I didn't want to rule out the possibility of a rat just because it was distasteful. I couldn't pretend like that sort of shit didn't happen from time to time. But my boys, I'd grown up with a lot of them, and the ones that I hadn't, I brought up myself. They were my soldiers, hand-picked and trusted, men I'd treated well. They did our business, set up our drug deals, kept shit flowing across the neighborhoods. I kept them safe and paid them in fat, heavy stacks of cash every week. I kept them all happy. The idea that any one of them would turn on me for Vlas made my skin crawl. "Come on," I said. "Get up." "Where are we going?" she asked. "Downstairs. You need coffee, and I want to watch you walk across the room." I smirked and stood, moving back over to my wardrobe. She looked at me, her cheeks red, and let the sheet drop away. She climbed out of bed and hesitated before walking to the bathroom. I stared at her long legs, her lean body, her perky breasts. I felt my cock stir as I took down my jacket and slipped it on. I headed downstairs while she showered and made a few calls. When I was done, I made the coffee, scrambled some eggs, and made some toast. It was finished by the time she came down wearing a pair of sweats and another black tank top. I glanced at her body, at her breasts, unable to help myself. Having her last night, sinking my cock deep into her tight pussy again and again, fucking her rough without any mercy, it only made me want her more. But I had business to attend to. "Sit," I said. She curled up at the kitchen table, legs crossed under her. I put a plate of eggs and toast down in front of her and poured a coffee. "You're not eating?" she asked. I shook my head. "Got shit to do." "Dante, don't worry. Gino will be in soon." She stared at me for a long moment, then looked away. "Yeah, okay, good." She bit her toast and sipped her coffee. I walked to the kitchen counter, picked up the gun I'd left next to the frying pan, and slipped it into the waistband of my pants. I covered it with my jacket, adjusted my cuffs, and hesitated just a moment. "I'll see you later," I said. "Be careful." She blurted the words out like they were hard to say. I smirked and nodded. "I'll see what I can do." "You don't want to ruin another shirt." I barked a laugh and left the kitchen. Stephen was already idling down by the curb. Gino got out from the back and I stopped him. "You missed the action last night," I said. He shrugged. "You know me, boss." "I do. I know you would have been there." I reached into my pocket and took out a small roll of hundreds. I shoved them into his hand. "Watch her close." "I will." I nodded and got into the car. Gino headed up the steps without counting the money. I smiled and looked at Stephen. He nodded back and put the car into gear. "You look happy," he said. "Finally fucked that little toy of yours?" I winced. "Don't talk about her that way." "Fine, but the point stands." "What have you heard?" I asked, changing the subject. "Vlas is unhappy, but he's not making any waves, not yet at least. The crew's been warned, and all our associates and spies are out in full force this morning, with their ears to the ground. We'll turn something up." "Fucking better," I grunted. "I have to know how Vlas pulled that shit last night." "I know what you're thinking," Stephen said, glancing at me as he stopped at a traffic light. "Of course you think you do." "It's not a fucking rat." "Who said that's what I thought?" "You did, and you didn't have to." I shook my head. "You think you know me so well." "I do," he said. "Don't fuck around, Dante. I know how you get when you think you're being wronged." "I'm holding it in check," I said, looking out the window. "And the girl—" He started and stopped himself. I turned and narrowed my eyes. "What about her?" "She's a liability." He kept looking straight ahead as the light changed and he pulled forward. "No, she's not." "She is, and you fucking know it, Dante." Stephen's voice sounded tense and it almost surprised me. "Vlas is already starting to use her against you. What's with that girl anyway?" "She's mine," I said. "I'm going to make that girl my bride." Stephen just sighed and shook his head. "You're fucking crazy. You remember putting a bullet in her dad's head, right? You remember wrapping his corpse in plastic? I do, I said, and I'm still going to marry her. That's the dumbest shit I've ever heard. You know what? When you can keep a girl around for more than 10 minutes without scaring her off, then you can talk shit to me. Steven snorted. Say what you want. The girl's a liability. Vlas may not be a good fighter, but he's a fucking psycho. He'll use her against you. He's already doing it. I stared at the streets flashing past as we left the suburbs and headed deeper into the city. I knew he was right. Knew Vlas saw how I felt about Ada at our last meeting. That was exactly his kind of move. Find a weakness and exploit it as hard as he could. Ada was that weakness for me, as much as I didn't want to admit it. But that wouldn't change a thing. I already made up my mind. I knew what I wanted, and I wasn't the kind of man to back down once I decided on something. I was going to have her. Ada was mine, body and soul. I was going to marry that girl, make her my wife, and get her pregnant. I'd keep her fucked and happy, wrapped in furs, covered in diamonds. I'd give her everything she wanted, so long as she was mine, every inch. There was no going back for me, not anymore. He can go ahead and try, I grunted. Steven just shook his head and we drove back into the city without another word.
14. Ada. I ate my breakfast in silence as Gino took his spot on the couch. He didn't turn on the TV, he just sat back and looked at his phone. There was a gun on the coffee table in front of him, and as I stood up to clean the dishes, I lingered in the kitchen and stared at it for a long moment. Can I ask you something? He turned and looked at me with a frown. If you have to. I smiled. Your boss mentioned it to me yesterday. He cocked his head. Dante? No, Don Leone. He grunted. Never met him before yesterday, he said. Only ever saw him from a distance and only when Dante met with him. Well, he mentioned something about how you and Dante got together? Gino smiled a little. I'm surprised he knows that story. Apparently he does. I tilted my head a little. Would you tell me? His smile disappeared. I don't know. Please. I leaned forward on the counter. I want to get to know Dante better, but it's hard, you know? He's not the kind of man that makes himself known very easily. Right, it's like pulling teeth. So I was hoping maybe you could tell me something. You know, that would help me get to know him better. Gino hesitated. He glanced away for a second, and I could tell he was wrestling with what to do. But then he nodded his head and stood. Make me some coffee, then I'll tell you. I grinned. Deal. He sat down at the table, took out a cigarette, and lit it up. He smoked while I made a fresh pot. When it was done, I brought him a cup and sat down across from him, frowning at the cigarette. He doesn't mind, Gino said, stubbing it out on the saucer I'd brought over with the coffee cup. But I'll put it out. Thanks. I leaned back in my chair as he took a sip of his drink. So, how did you and Dante meet? I was 13, he said. Dante was a few years older. He and Steven ran this little crew, you know. Not soldiers, not maid or anything, not even associates. They did petty shit, beat up kids for cash, shook them down and stuff like that. Stole bikes and sold them back. Little things, but they were making money. Way more money than any other kids at that age could handle. They started selling drugs, just little shit like weed, no big deal. I think that's how he got involved with the Leone family at the start, but I'm not sure. Gino hesitated for a second and took a sip of coffee. Go on, I say gently. You really want to hear this shit? He asked. I thought you were a good person, didn't want to get involved with gangsters and thugs. I hesitated. I don't love that he sold drugs. Gino laughed. How do you think we make most of our money? I just shrugged. I didn't think about it. We sell anything with a market. Stolen shit, drugs, pills, protection. That's what he did back then, too. He's never been a saint." "I know that. Better not forget it." Gino took a breath and shook his head. "I thought I was a badass back then. I had this little business where I'd steal candy out of the back of this bodega that didn't lock its back door during the day. I'd snatch some candy and sell it to the younger kids. Made a little money. Got a big head and thought I could do better. So I approached some older guys and tried to buy some big weight. Just some weed, but enough of it that I could sell and make a profit. Older guys took me back into this abandoned lot. I had like $500 in candy money. It was a small fortune. Every fucking penny I made over a couple of years stealing and doing odd jobs like shoveling driveways and mowing lawns. I was gonna get as much weed with that 500 as I could, then sell all that and turn 500 into 5,000. He paused and I leaned toward him. "I guess that's not what happened?" "Nah, it's not." He took a breath. "Guys took me to this parking lot down south near the stadiums, across the street from the park, threw me out and started kicking my ass. But that 500, it was all I had in the world, you know? My dad was a drunk, my mom was working 2 jobs just to keep shit straight. I had that money and the clothes on my back, nothing else, and I couldn't just let them take it from me. So I fought back, gave pretty good. But there were 3 of them, and they were way older than me. Just some local punks, looking back on it, but I thought they really were made men, you know? Still, I fought like crazy until one of those dudes pulled a knife on me. This long switchblade. I remember the look in his eye, told me to get on the ground, give him the fucking money, or he'd slit my throat. I believed him, too, 'cause I'd just punched him in the neck and kicked his friend in the balls." Gino grinned, his eyes a little distant, before sipping his coffee. "How did Dante get involved?" I asked. "He was in the park," Gino said. "Didn't see him at first. I guess he was there selling weed. That's what he said, anyway. I don't know why he came up or why he got involved. You'd have to ask him that. But as soon as that asshole pulled a knife, Dante appeared with Steven at his back, shouting at the dudes to fuck off, even though he was still younger than them. Well, shit got tense, and the knife guy got into Dante's face. Dante knocked the guy down, took his knife, and Steven pulled a gun. The dudes got on the ground, the 2 of them took all their money, and we got the fuck out of there." Gino grinned huge, ear to ear, and I couldn't help but laugh. "Are you serious? You guys ended up robbing them?" "Fuck yeah," he said. "Made another $100 each. They didn't have to give me anything, but I think Dante felt bad. After that, I started working for him, you know? He cut me into his business and I started selling weed. Little bit at first, but more and more. I never forgot what he did for me. Never fucking will. I've been with Dante since the start." He finished his story and slumped back in his chair. He let out a breath and finished his coffee. "Should I be afraid of him?" I asked Gino, my voice soft and low. Gino shrugged. "Probably. If you weren't stupid, you would be." "But I don't think I am." I bit my lip and shook my head. "It's crazy. You know what he did to my father. You were there that night." "I know," he said, "and your dad deserved it." Gino stood up abruptly. "Look, I'm just your guard, all right? Don't ask me shit about Dante anymore." I blinked, surprised. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cross any lines." "I don't want to get involved in his shit. I just do what he tells me to do, all right? So don't ask me shit about him anymore." "Yeah, okay, Gino, I won't." "Good." He hesitated, then shook his head. "Of course you should be afraid of him. You don't know shit about Dante. Maybe if you got to know him, you could answer your own stupid fucking question." He turned and walked away from the table. He sat back down on the couch, feet up on the coffee table, and turned the TV on. I sat there for a long moment trying to figure out what I just did wrong. But he didn't look back, and I knew not to push him too hard. So I got up, cleared his dish and his cup, poured myself more coffee, and headed back to my room. I was tempted to go get into Dante's bed, breathe his smell from his sheets, but I decided not to push my luck. I retreated into my own bed and curled up beneath the covers, my eyes shut tight. I kept thinking about Dante's body against mine, about him stepping up onto the porch with water dripping into his eyes, his shirt splattered with blood and drenched with rain. He kissed me hard and pinned me there like I was his to use and abuse, and I liked it. God, I hated myself just a little bit, but I liked it when he took me like that. But I was afraid of him, afraid of how I was starting to feel. It was those words that just wouldn't go away. He was going to make me his bride. That should have made me feel sick. Instead, it made my heart beat faster, made me feel lightheaded, made me feel dizzy with lust and need. I covered my head with a pillow and tried to figure things out.
15. Dante. I spent 2 nights in the city reassuring my people that things would be fine and getting business done. But 2 nights away from Ada was too long, and I was itching to see her by the end of the 3rd afternoon. I made Stephen take me on a little side trip to Center City's shops before we drove back to Mount Airy. He didn't comment on the big box I'd put in the back seat. Knew better than to push me on that, not with the mood I was in. "Any word from the Don?" I asked him. "Or any of his soldiers?" "Nothing," Stephen said. "Far as I can tell, everything's still on." "Good." I leaned my head back on the seat. "Things look solid around here. I think it's time we took it to Vlas again." "Already?" Stephen frowned. "Can't let that fucker get himself settled. He thinks he got one over on me." "Dante, you broke into his club, knocked his people around, and terrorized his girls." "But he wasn't there," I growled. "And he left that fucking picture. He thinks he's got one on me, and it's time to let him know why he's been afraid of me since we were kids." Stephen sighed but didn't argue, and I stared out the window as we weaved through the streets and out to the suburbs again. He dropped me off out in front of my house. I grabbed the box from the back seat and lingered by the curb. "Send one of the guys with a car," I said, "and have him drop it off. I've got shit to do tonight." Stephen stared at me. "Shit to do? Like what?" "Taking Ada out." "That's a dumb fucking idea." He sighed and rubbed his temples. "It's fine. I'm going to 50 Stories. Our club, right in our territory. It'll be safe. Doesn't matter if you're going to the Don's fucking living room. Vlas can send guys anywhere, even if it's in our territory." "I'm going," I growled. "Not letting this shit hold me back." "Fine. Do what you got to do. But I'll bring some boys and hang around." "I don't need guards." "You do, Dante." Stephen gave me a look. "You're tough, but you're not invincible." I stood on the sidewalk with the long, fancy red box under my arm. I clenched my jaw, but finally nodded. "Fine. But be discreet. She doesn't need to know." "All right." Stephen hesitated and probably wanted to tell me that Ada was a distraction I couldn't afford, so I turned and didn't give him the chance. I headed up the steps and in through the front door. I heard Stephen pull away as I shut the door behind me. I lingered for a moment in the entry hall, looking down toward the living room and the kitchen. I heard footsteps, and Gino appeared in front of me, a frown on his face, his hand on a gun tucked into his waistband. He relaxed a fraction of an inch. "Boss," he said. "Go home," I grunted. "You're done for the night." Gino hesitated before nodding. He grabbed his things from the kitchen table, then slipped past me and stepped out the door. My eyes moved up toward the staircase and found Ada standing at the top of it. She wore a gray NASA t-shirt and jean shorts. She tilted her head to one side and frowned a little. "What's wrong?" she asked. "Nothing," I say, taking a step toward the stairs. "You look pissed." I opened my mouth, then shut it again. "Nah," I said. "I'm fine." I forced a smile on my lips and the negative thoughts from my mind. "I got something for you." "Yeah?" I started up the steps toward her and she backed away. I reached the top, then moved past her. She flattened against the wall, her eyes locked on me the whole way as I began to head up the next flight to my room. "Come on," I said. She followed without a word. I moved in through the white painted wood door and put the box down on top of my comforter. She hesitated at the foot of the bed as I stepped away and gestured at the box. "Open it." She paused for a moment, her hands fluttering over the top of it like nervous birds. The box was dark red, unmarked, with a blue satin bow holding it together. She pulled the bow, untied it, and slipped the top open. She sucked in a breath as she took out the dress. She held it up and stared for a long moment. "What is this?" "Givenchy." I tilted my head. "It'll fit." "No, I mean, for what?" I smirked and stepped closer to her. I tilted her chin toward me, but didn't kiss her lips, despite how tempting they looked. "We're going out." "Going out?" "That's right. You dance, don't you?" "I mean, sure, but isn't that dangerous?" I laughed and shook my head. "Not for me. Now put that on." She pulled away and I let her go. She looked at the dress and shook her head. "I can't go out in this. I don't have shoes or anything that'll match. It's way too much." "Do your best," I said. "Now take my gift and put it on." She looked at me for a long moment, then laid the dress out flat on my bed. She pulled her shirt off, unbuttoned her jean shorts, and slid them down her body. She stared at the dress for a moment before shaking her head. "I can't wear a bra with this," she said. "Good, take it off then." I moved over to a small leather chair in the corner of my room next to my wardrobe and sat down. I crossed my legs and watched, her breasts spilling out of her old black lacy bra as she took it off, her little thong barely covering the mound of her pussy. She picked up the dress, unzipped it, and pulled it over her body. She bit her lip and looked at me. "Little help?" I stood and walked over. I pulled up the zipper and hooked the tiny clasp. "There," I said and stepped away, sitting back down. "Let me look at you." She turned and I felt a thrill run through me. The dress was black with long sleeves and a mock neckline, the lace covering her chest and arms. The front was cut low, the black soft fabric plunging down deep, showing off just a hint of her gorgeous breasts. The top was fitted in tight, but flared out at the skirt. It fit her perfectly, made her long legs look incredible, and showed just a hint of her gorgeous perky breasts. I felt my heart beating wildly in my chest, and all I wanted to do was rip it off of her. She took in a sharp breath and crossed her arms over herself. "Well, you look incredible." "Really?" She shook her head. "I've never worn anything like this before. It's too expensive." "Doesn't matter." I stood up. "Come here." She followed me into the bathroom. I closed the door and stood her in front of the floor-length mirror. I leaned over her and unfolded her arms, made her look at herself as I pulled back her hair and kissed her neck. She let out a soft breath as my lips found her skin. "Look at yourself," I purred in her ear. "You look incredible. You realize that, don't you?" "Shit," she said. "I don't know." Trust me, little Ada. I wouldn't let you leave the house if you didn't look perfect for me." She looked over her shoulder, and I pressed my lips against hers. I kissed her, hungry and angry and ravenous. My tongue stroked against hers, and I pulled away as my hands moved up to cup her breasts, then dropped down to her hips. "I trust you," she said. "Good. Now go find some shoes and finish getting ready. We're leaving in 10. She nodded, pulled open the door, and hurried out. I watched her go, her thick hair bouncing as she disappeared out of my room and back downstairs. I sat at the edge of my bed and stared at my shoes for a long moment. I tried to calm myself, but ever since I first brought her into my life, I haven't been able to take a break without feeling like I might explode, might break something, might rip a man's skull clear off his head. Sometimes that feeling's useful, but right then, I needed clarity, not more anger. Ada could bring that clarity. If only I could slip myself deep between her wet, warm legs and stroke my cock inside her tight cunt before filling her deep with my seed. But first, she needed to dance. She'd been cooped up in this fucking house for far too long, and I knew she was going stir-crazy. Besides, I wanted to show her off, wanted to show my soldiers that their capo had a new girl, a beautiful girl, and they could all feel fucking jealous. I stood and smiled before heading into the bathroom to fix my suit in the mirror.
16. Ada. I came downstairs in the only pair of black heels I owned. They were old and scuffed and didn't look right with the dress, but it didn't matter. The look in Dante's eyes when he saw me told me that he didn't care what shoes I had on, so long as I wore his dress. It sent a thrill through me, and he walked over wearing a slim suit, black jacket, and pants with a white shirt and no tie. He sipped from a glass of something brown before slipping a hand along my lower back. "You look perfect," he said. "Thanks." He kissed my neck, then bit my lip. "Come on, I bet you're sick of being here." "I don't know. I think I got used to Gino sitting around looking angry all the time." "That's just his face. He's got resting dick face." I laughed, and he threw back his drink. He put the glass down on a little side table, then took my hand and led me back out the front door. He didn't bother locking it, and we moved down the front steps, my hand through his arm. A black SUV, identical to all the other cars I'd seen him drive, was parked halfway down the block. He helped me into the passenger side and got into the driver's side, then pulled out and eased toward the city. "This place is in my territory," he said. "It's one of the safest places we can be." "But not perfectly safe, right?" He shrugged. "Right. Vlass has balls on him, I won't deny it. I can't assume he won't try something in my own territory." "But you don't seem afraid." "No." He glanced at me, then shook his head. "Not afraid at all." I sank back into the leather and bit my lip. I loved the way he looked at me and loved the way I felt in this dress. Even though I'd never dreamed of owning something from a brand like Givenchy, and the dress probably cost more than my whole wardrobe combined, I still couldn't help myself. I felt beautiful and desired. This intense, gorgeous mobster wanted me badly. He was giving me expensive dresses and making me put them on in front of him, and the thought just drove me wild. We headed into the city, not talking much. He seemed preoccupied, and I didn't want to press too hard. He found a spot on a packed block and stepped out before coming around to help me down. I held his arm as he led me down the crowded block. Lots of young people milling about outside of hipster bars and late-night pizza places. We crossed the street and came across a line of people dressed in club clothes. some of the girls looking bored, some of the guys looking annoyed. Dante walked past them all and took me straight to the bouncer, a bald guy with a neck thicker than a tree trunk. His eyes lit up when he saw Dante, and he stood up off his stool. "Yo, man," he said. "What's up, T?" Dante said, shaking the guy's hand. "You doing good?" "Doing great." "Good vibe in there?" "Packed tonight, I hope so." "Good, man. Hey, let some of those girls back there in. Saw a few hot ones." Dante snapped his fingers, whistled, and pointed at a group of girls in short dresses. "Ladies, you're in. Let's go." Some guys started to complain, but Dante shot them a glare, and they shut their mouths. One of them whispered something to the other, and both dudes went silent. I stared as the girls laughed and headed into the club before Dante took my hand. "Let's go in," he said, and he tugged me along behind him. I'd never met someone that could control a line like that before. "Do you own this place?" I asked him. "No," he said, laughing. "Although they do pay me." "For what?" "Protection, mostly. It's just good business to put some cash in the local capo's pocket, especially a club like this. They send me some money. I make sure my boys patronize them as much as I can. It's a good situation all around." We walked down a short black hall, then through another set of doors and into a pulse-pounding club atmosphere. The place was packed. There were standing tables scattered to the right and a huge bar in the middle of the place with people stacked 2 deep all around it. 4 waitresses ran around filling drink orders. The far left side of the place was one big dance floor with a DJ booth in the middle. The DJ was a white guy in a tank top with headphones on and a MacBook in front of him. He bobbed his head and typed something on the computer before waving his hands in the air. Dante took my hand and pulled me along. The crowd parted in front of him like butter in front of a hot knife. He slipped up to the bar at the far end where the waitresses took their orders and caught the eye of one of the girls. She came over, short brunette hair, low-cut tank top, big smile that showed too much of her gums. "Hey, Dante," she yelled. "What can I get you?" "Whiskey for me, gin and tonic for her." He glanced back at me. "Good?" "Good," I said, feeling overwhelmed. I'd just gone from staying alone inside his house for days on end, seeing nobody but Dante, Gino, and a few of his crew, to suddenly being shoved into a huge, loud, packed, sweaty club, wearing uncomfortable old heels and an absurdly expensive designer dress. But Dante put his arm around me and drew me close, and I looked up into his face. He smirked at me and leaned down. "Don't worry," he said in my ear. "We can go somewhere private when you've had enough." "We're just getting started, though," I said. He laughed, and the bartender returned with our drinks. He dropped a 20 on the bar, winked at the girl, and handed me a drink. We found a spot at a standing table not far away, and I looked around the place. People were staring over at us. I didn't notice at first, since I was so overwhelmed by the loud music and the people dancing. But everywhere I looked, someone was watching. Girls, guys, young and old, it didn't matter. It seemed like they all knew who Dante was, and they were all wondering what the hell I was doing with a man like that. I was asking myself the same question. I leaned toward Dante as he took a long drink. "People are staring," I said in his ear. He shrugged. "It's my territory. They know me here." "But still, a lot of people are staring." He laughed and looked around. "A few of them are my boys. I guess Steven didn't trust me to be alone out here tonight." I frowned and followed his gaze. Sure enough, I recognized 2 guys standing at a table not far off. They caught me looking, and the one raised a beer with a grin on his face. I smiled back before leaning toward Dante again. They're here to protect you? They're here to make sure nothing goes down, he said. I don't need protecting. Well, I do. I grinned at him. In case you forgot. I didn't forget. His hand moved down my lower back and gripped my ass. I know you're all mine. I laughed and hit his chest. I took a long drink and looked around, starting to loosen up a little bit. People were dancing tightly packed together, sweating, laughing, working their hips. Girls moved up against their men, and the guys were free with their hands. And nobody seemed to mind, care, or notice. Drinks were flowing, and I remembered what it felt like to have a good time for the first time in a while. I took another long drink, then set it down. Come on, I said. You brought me here to dance. Damn right I did. He knocked his drink back, then put it on the table. He took my hand as I put my drink down next to his. Not finished, not halfway there. He dragged me to the dance floor, and we slipped our way into the mass of people as the song changed, an upbeat, pulsing tempo. He pulled me tight against him, and we danced. I was self-conscious at first, intensely aware of all the strangers around us. I kept catching looks from women, from men, most of them jealous, but some of them just curious. Dante moved like liquid, comfortable and sensual, and he kept my hips pressed against his as my ass swayed to the rhythm. But soon the song changed back, and I felt a bead of sweat start to drop down my back. I lost all sense of time, and the eyes that flitted across us disappeared from my awareness. Dante became everything as I danced with him, pressing my body close, grinding up against him. I felt his muscles, his intense lips near my neck, my throat, his hands in my hair, on my hips, on my ass. He didn't seem to care at all what people thought or what they saw. He only cared about me, only cared about dancing close and tight, our bodies beginning to sweat. I was panting, breathing hard as I turned to face him, moving my hips with his, and he tilted my chin up to kiss me. I kissed him hard, then turned back and he grabbed my hips. We danced like that, grinding and moving to the rhythm for song after song. The world stopped mattering, and time stopped making sense. All I felt was his hands on my skin, my body moving to the pulsing beat of the music, and all my worries dropped away, disappeared into nothing. He let out a growl after what felt like forever and spun me around. This time, he grabbed my hair tight in his fist and kissed me deep, tongue against my tongue, before pulling away. Come on, he said. I can't take this shit anymore. I let him lead me away from the dance floor. He shoved his way toward the back of the club. There was a long line for the bathrooms, but we shoved past them. There was a door marked Employees Only between the men's room and the women's room, and Dante pushed it open. He tugged me along with him and slammed the door shut. It was a small office, a desk in the center with a large CRT monitor at one end and a flat computer monitor at the other. A filing cabinet was overflowing with papers and receipts, and there were more folders and files scattered all over the place. Dante turned to me as I leaned up against the desk, staring at him, my heart racing. We shouldn't be in here, I said. You saw the sign. They can come kick me out then, he said, stepping slowly toward me. The motherfuckers can try, at least. A wicked smile broke across his mouth as he pressed himself tight against me. I gasped as he pushed my legs open, then lifted me up by the ass, his hands grasping me hard. He sat me down on the desk, knocking away files, stacks of papers hitting the floor with a thud and spilling over the carpet. His hands moved up my back and gripped my hair then. He pulled hard and kissed me, tongue in my mouth, biting my lip with a growl. I fumbled at his belt, my heart racing, unable to help myself. I pulled it open as he kissed me, his right hand moving from my hand to tease my breasts over my dress. He reached around and undid the small clasp as I managed to get him unzipped. A moment later, he had the back of my dress undone, and his fingernails moved gently down my skin before he pulled the dress forward. I let it fall off, exposing my breasts. He kissed my neck, licked my nipples, bit them gently. I moaned and pushed him back, dropping to my knees in front of him, the dress hanging down around my waist. I tugged down his pants and his underwear, taking his thick cock into my hand and sliding it into my mouth. He grabbed my hair and pushed me down his shaft. I moaned and sucked him faster, licking around his tip. "People were staring tonight because you look so fucking good," he growled, pushing me down deep. I gagged and gasped, but started sucking him again, my mouth sliding up and down his tip and shaft, bobbing forward, my breasts shaking as I took him hard in my mouth. "They were staring because they're jealous of me," he growled. "Jealous of the girl on my arm. Men wanted to have you, women wanted to be you. Little Ada, you don't know what you do to me. I wasn't lying when I said I'd make you my bride." He pushed my mouth down deep along his shaft again. I gagged but held him there in my throat. He fucked my mouth, pumping his hips, before pulling me back and kissing me. I stroked him fast with both my hands as he reached down to tease my breasts. My nipples were so stiff and it felt amazing as his fingers teased me. I started sucking him again, sucking and stroking his cock at the same time, working his shaft and rolling my tongue around his tip. I moaned as I did it, losing myself in the moment, taking his cock between my lips. "Fuck, you're beautiful," he whispered. "I want you to swallow me, taste every fucking drop. Keep sucking my cock, little Ada. You're all mine, you beautiful girl. You made every head in this fucking club turn tonight." I kept going, faster, faster, moaning as I sucked him. He tensed and grabbed my hair, fucking my mouth, and I knew he was close. I kept going, not slowing, as his fist tightened in my hair. I tasted him cum in my mouth. He growled his pleasure, and I sucked him tight, taking every drop of him on my tongue. I swallowed and kept going, sucking him until he was clean, then licked every inch of his thick cock before he pulled me to my feet and kissed me. He backed me up against the desk again and kissed me for a long moment, hands teasing my breasts. He bit my lip. "Good girl," he whispered. I pulled my dress up as he got his pants back on. I slid my arms into the sleeves and held the chest over my breasts. "I'm not going to lie. This isn't the night I expected," I said, breathless and glowing with pleasure. I could still taste him on my lips. He smirked and finished tucking in his shirt. "What did you expect?" he asked. But I didn't have a chance to answer. Someone banged at the door, hard. He turned with a frown before they banged again, the door flexing. "Get back," he growled at me, and the door flexed a third time. Wood splintered as I realized what was happening. "Dante," I said, fear spiking through me. He grabbed me, pulled me around the desk, and threw me on the floor behind it as the door burst open.
17. Dante. I managed to get Ada down behind the desk just as the door split open and 3 guys spilled into the tiny office. They must not have expected the cramped space. There was barely enough room for 2 of us, let alone 3 grown men. The first guy came in with a gun out, wearing jeans and a collared button-down shirt, looking like any random club asshole, his hair gelled up in little spikes, his pale skin and blue eyes looking sallow in the office light. I dodged to the side as he shot wildly at me. He squeezed off 2 rounds, both whizzing past my face, as I grabbed his wrist, turned it, and twisted his arm up. He growled in pain, and the gun clattered to the floor as I smashed my forehead into his nose with a satisfying crunch and a spray of blood. Ada screamed, but I didn't have time to check her. The next guy was trying to muscle in and managed to land a crunching blow on my face. I staggered back against the desk as he brought a gun up. But before he could fire, he tripped on his downed companion, and I took the chance to surge forward, slamming my elbow into his face. He grunted, and I grabbed his wrist, turning him to face the last guy charging in with a knife. Before I could fire, the guy sliced his knife along my side. I grunted as pain flashed up my skin like lightning, then kicked him in the stomach and knocked him back. His eyes went wide as I ripped the gun from the second guy's grip and fired a round into the knife man's chest. His white shirt bloomed red, and blood splattered my face as he stumbled back out into the hall. People screamed and began to run. The knife guy got trampled as people stomped on his body. I threw the second guy against the cabinet, but he wasn't done yet. He shook his head, then swiped at me, taking hard jabs at my face. I dodged, caught one on my wrist, and turned his punch wide before moving in close. I brought my knee into his gut, then jabbed him in the throat before smashing his face against the corner of the filing cabinet. He screamed as a tooth came loose, and he spit blood on the floor as he smashed down on top of his friend. I stood there, breathing hard, head dizzy before I turned. Ada was crouched behind the desk, hands over her head. "Are you okay?" I asked. She nodded, opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out. A second later, Stephen and Biagio came crashing into the room, guns drawn. "What the fuck happened?" Stephen barked. I gestured at the mess. 2 guys down, 1 dead in the hall. "Vlas," I said. Stephen stared at the men. "They don't look like his boys." "Hired muscle," I said. "I'd bet anything." I walked over to the first guy and flipped him over onto his back. I knelt down on his throat and made him gag. "Who do you work for?" I asked. "Nobody," he gasped. "Nobody. Paid by Vlas. Work for nobody." I released him, then kicked him hard in the skull. Motherfucker. Rage rolled through my body as I turned and grabbed Ada, pulling her along as I shoved past Stephen. "Wait," she said. "My dress." I stopped in the hall, standing in the knife guy's blood. I turned her around, zipped her up, then pushed her forward. "Go with Biagio," I grunted, motioning for my soldier. "Get back home right now." "Dante!" "Go," I snapped at her. Biagio moved past me, took her arm and pulled her along. The club was emptying out, people spilling into the street. It was chaos, and anything could happen in this shit. But I didn't think Vlas had more tricks to send at us. Stephen stood next to me, staring down at the dead man. "This is bad," he said. "You can't catch a case right now. We'll dispose of it." He sighed and rubbed his temples. "Vlas never uses outside muscle. What the fuck is this?" "He's playing to win," I said. I looked at my lieutenant and frowned. "Don't fucking say it." He grinned. "Why not? I don't get to all that often." "Fine, get it out of your system." "I told you not to come here tonight, remember?" I grunted and kicked at the dead guy. He didn't move. Dead for sure. I touched the wound on my side and my fingers came back bloody. "I need the doctor again," I said. "More fucking stitches, and I need a new shirt." "We'll deal with this guy first." Stephen shook his head. "Looks like some fucking local kid." Stephen was right. The dead guy couldn't have been older than his 20s at most. Probably some up-and-coming gangster that wasn't affiliated with the Leone family. Kid probably thought he'd get some serious cash on top of some serious street cred if he and his boys could manage to kill me. Fucking idiots. The other two need to come with us, I said. Get the rest of the guys in here now. We'll take care of those other two and find a spot for these bodies. And we'll compensate the club, make sure they keep their fucking mouths shut. Fine. Better hurry, though. Cops will be on their way soon. Make the calls. Stephen nodded and walked off with his phone to his ear. In minutes, more of our guys would flood this place, and we'd get the bodies out the back. I'd kill the other two and toss all three into the Schuylkill River. I stood over the dead kid and shook my head as rage flew through me. I just wanted one night. One fucking night where I gave Ada a nice dress and took her out, showed her a good time, made her feel special. Things were going good, we danced, she sucked my cock like she was born for it, and soon I was going to take her back home and fuck her nice and slow. But Vlas had to be lurking around the corner, ready to ruin any measure of joy I could find in my otherwise broken and violent existence. It was time to hit back, and hit back hard. No more trying to send cute messages. No more fucking around. I was going to kill Vlas for this, one way or the other. I growled, bent over, and began to drag the dead guy toward the back door, leaving a long line of blood in our wake.
18. Ada. I couldn't sleep that night. Biagio dropped me back at the house, made sure I got inside safe, then drove fast back to the city. I was left alone for the first time in a while, not a single guy left to guard me. Some part of me wondered if I could run, but instead I stripped off the dress, shoved it in the closet, and pulled on comfortable clothes. I sat downstairs on the couch, ignoring some old Western movie, while drinking a big glass of wine. Hours slipped past. By 3 a.m, I was ready to go to bed and hoped that someone came soon. I was so afraid that Dante got hurt, or that they got arrested, or worse. I didn't know what to think, and although I was tempted to call him or text him, I knew he was busy and couldn't talk. Just as I finished my glass of wine, the front door opened. I stood, fear slicing through me, as I wondered if it was the Russians coming to finish me off. Instead, Dante walked into the room, looking pale and haggard. He had on a fresh shirt, but I could tell he was hurting. I rushed to him, relief flooding me. He winced as I hugged him, and I pulled back immediately. "Are you okay? What happened?" He shook his head. "I'm exhausted," he said. "Need a fucking bath." "A bath?" I blinked, surprised. "Helps relax me after shit like this." He gestured with his head. "Come on." I followed him down the hall and up the steps. He moved slow, like he was in pain. We reached the very top and went into his room. The master bathroom had a marble floor, marble vanity, and a large jacuzzi tub with a huge standing shower stall next to it. I figured the tub didn't get used much, but he turned it on and sat down on the edge for a long moment. I hesitated, then knelt down in front of him. He looked at me, and his hand touched my cheek. "I'm sorry," he said. "For what?" I started to unbutton his shirt, gently and slowly. "I put you in danger again, all because I felt bad." "That wasn't your fault. You couldn't have known." I bit my lip and shook my head with a sigh. "Honestly, Dante, it wasn't your fault." He looked away as I got his shirt open. I sucked in a little breath as I looked at the bandage on his side. He followed my gaze. "It's not as bad as I thought," he said. "Only a few stitches." "You're a mess." "Yeah." He laughed, then winced. "I am. How about you?" Ears aren't ringing this time. He nodded. Good, getting used to it. I smiled and ran my fingers down his chest. Not sure if it's a good thing to getting used to hearing gunshots, you know. This isn't what I wanted for you. His voice was low and heavy with exhaustion. I helped him up and helped him get his belt off, his slacks off. He threw the clothes on the floor, then took off his boxer briefs. I stared at his muscular body, at the tattoos on his skin, at his long, thick cock. What did you want then? I don't know, he said with a sigh, and stepped into the tub. He sank down and let the water fill in around him. I stared at his body and felt a thrill. I sat on the edge and ran my fingers through his hair. I know what it means to be with a man like me. I don't think I do, I said. It means danger. It's exciting, it feels good, but it might get you killed. You know it as well as I do. You've seen it twice now. It's a bad time. It won't always be like this, right? He smiled a little, his eyes on the water as it rose up around him. His bandage got wet, soaked through, but he didn't seem to mind. I slowed the water down to a trickle, but didn't turn it off. Maybe, he said. Depends. Leone family hasn't been at war for years, not seriously. But things change, and the Russians are getting stronger. If this doesn't end soon, it might escalate into something more as the other capos get involved. I don't know what the Don's thinking or where this will end. I nodded slowly and leaned on the ledge of the tub behind him. I ran my hands down his chest and he took them in his own. I kissed his hair and breathed his smell deep into my nose. I don't know what I want, I admitted. I don't know if I want to run away or stay. I don't blame you. But I had fun tonight, and I trailed off. You looked perfect, he said. I felt beautiful. You should have. He squeezed my hands. That's what I wanted for you. We sat in silence for a long moment. He closed his eyes and seemed to relax as my fingers pressed against the muscles on his chest. I kissed his cheek and he let out a low grunt. Dante? Yeah. What happened after I left? He didn't open his eyes. You don't want to know. Yes, I do. I think if I'm going to stay here, I have to know what I'm involved with. He let out a breath. Killed the other two, he said. Threw all three into the river. Cops showed up, saw the blood, but had no bodies and no witnesses were talking. We'll straighten that out. I bet the family's lawyers are already descending. I dug my fingers into his chest. You killed them? Had to. Couldn't let what they did stand. Just doesn't work that way. I nodded once, biting back tears. I knew he was right, but it was horrible all the same. Yeah, okay, sure. He turned his head and looked into my eyes. If you want to leave, I'll give you money. I'll have one of my guys drive you as far as you want, or we can book you on the first flight out. I can even get you fake documents if you want, send you abroad. You can start over, Ada. I leaned back, pulling my hands away. He didn't move, just looked at me. I thought about that for a long moment and pictured what it would be like to have a new life. I could be whoever I wanted, choose my own name, make up my own backstory. I could be an entirely different person. But I knew life didn't work that way. No matter what, I'd be looking over my shoulder for the rest of my life, wondering when Vlas would catch up with me, just to prove he could. I'd be living in fear, away from the city I knew and loved, away from the place I was meant to be. No, I said. That's okay. Think about it. He looked back at the water. I stood up and walked over to the clothes he'd thrown on the floor. I bent over, picked them up, and straightened them out. I'll have these dry cleaned, I said. Thank you. I nodded, lingered at the door. His eyes flicked to mine, and he looked so tired. Don't fall asleep in there. I won't. Not sure I'll sleep much tonight, but you should. Yeah, I'll try. He nodded, then a smile slipped across his lips. Little Ada, if you stay, I'm going to make you my wife. I hope you believe me by now. I do, I whispered. Good. Go sleep in your own bed tonight. You might as well enjoy a few nights to yourself. Soon, I'm going to keep you in mine. I stared at him, my pulse racing fast. He smirked and leaned his head back, and I saw the cocky, arrogant, powerful man return to him. Good night, Dante. Good night, Ada. I left the bathroom and moved through his room. I glanced back once to find his head still resting back against the tub, the water trickling in around him. He looked beautiful, his shoulders and arms ripped, his face handsome and defined. I turned and walked through the quiet house to my room and locked the door behind me.
19. Dante. I woke up early the next morning, my body aching all over. I could feel the stitches burning in my side, and I felt like I got hit by a fucking truck. I managed to roll over and sit on the edge of my bed for a long moment, staring down at the floor. I brought Ada into danger. I did something stupid and selfish, all because I wanted to show her a good time. I wanted to reward her for being good. I wanted to get her a beautiful dress, dance with her, let her know that life with me wouldn't just be hiding out in a fucking house in the suburbs. Instead, we nearly got killed. If those guys had been professionals or members of Lass's crew, they would have done the job. I got lucky. All because Vlas had to use some nobodies. That was the only way they'd get into my club, the only way they'd get close. I grunted and got up. I brushed my teeth, showered, pulled on some sweats and a gray t-shirt. I was exhausted from dragging those bodies off and throwing them into the river, and all I wanted to do was sleep. But I had to work. I couldn't disappear for a full day without problems, not when we were in the middle of a war. I walked down the steps and hesitated as I moved down the hall. Ada's door was still shut. I pressed my ear against it and felt the cool wood against the side of my face. I couldn't hear anything, and I slowly turned the knob. It was unlocked and turned easily. The door opened a crack. I looked inside and saw her body lying on the bed, partially covered with the sheets. She wore a pair of black panties and a white shirt. Her hair was spilled around her head, and she was breathing deep and slow, still asleep. I stared at the line of her leg, leading up to her firm ass, and saw just a hint of her pussy. I stepped into the room and shut the door behind me with a soft click. She stirred as I walked to the end of the bed. I pulled the sheets off her, staring at her body. She wasn't wearing a bra, and I could see the outline of her breasts and nipples through the thin fabric. My heart hammered in my chest. She moved again, let out a little groan, and her eyes blinked open. She frowned, looked at me, looked at the clock. "Dante," she asked, "is everything okay?" I got onto the bed and kissed her thigh. She bit her lip and stared at me as I rolled her over onto her stomach and kissed up her thigh, up to her perfect ass. I took her panties and slowly pulled them down. Her hips lifted to let me slide them over, and I unwrapped her pussy like a present. She let out a little gasp as I left her panties around her knees and spread her ass wide. I licked her top to bottom. I growled with pleasure and joy as I tasted her beautiful skin. Her groans filled my ears, and my heart pounded a steady rhythm in my chest as I licked her faster, tongue sliding inside her, then back out. She grabbed the pillow tight as I reached up along her back, my hands moving up her shirt, feeling her smooth skin. I pulled my hands back and slapped her ass. She gasped and looked at me, almost angry, and I just smirked. I slid my fingers inside, and she was already getting soaked. I moved them deep and curled them, fucking her and sliding them along the roof of her cunt. She wiggled her hips and let out a soft groan before I moved my fingers out and cupped her pussy, fingers spreading her until I could rub her clit in slow and soft circles. Her groans made me so fucking hard I could barely breathe. I took my hand away and ripped off my shirt. "Dante," she whispered. I grabbed her hair and leaned over her. "Don't talk," I growled in her ear, then spanked her ass hard. She gasped, and I pushed her down into the pillows before leaning back and taking off my sweatpants. I took them off, followed by my boxer briefs, and she just watched me. I saw her eyes widen as I knelt behind her again, stroking my stiff, thick cock. She wiggled her hips, and I grabbed her wrists, pinning them behind her back. She groaned as I spit in my hand and rubbed it along my cock. She stared at me, mouth hanging open, and I smirked as I pressed the tip of my cock against her waiting, wet pussy. I slid inside her and let out a growl of pure pleasure. My injuries faded away. All the bruises, the stitches, the pain receded as her tight pussy wrapped around my shaft. I slid in and out, letting her soaked spot slick around my cock. I grabbed her hair with my left hand, held her wrists pinned with my right, and I fucked her. I took her, plain and simple. She was mine, her tight pussy mine, her perfect body mine. I was a mess of tangled nerves and anger, but as soon as I filled her perfect little pussy to the brim and began to fuck her rough, I knew nothing mattered but Ada. I knew I fucked up the night before, but things would be different moving forward. She'd be mine, my bride. I fucked her harder. She gasped, moaning, taking my thick cock. She wiggled her hips, and I continued to slam into her, filling her to the brim, making her tight cunt all mine with every stroke. She bucked back against me, sliding herself along my shaft, and I let out a growl as I released her wrists and spanked her ass. She took me, every inch of me. I fucked her harder, feeling like an animal, feeling like a man. I grabbed her hips and made her gasp as my rough body moved against hers. I leaned forward and pulled her hair back, kissing her over her shoulder, letting her lean back and ride my shaft up and down, her gorgeous hips working in perfect circles, pleasure writhing through me in waves. I pushed her off with a grunt and turned her around. Her eyes were fire and steel, and I shoved her down onto her back. I spread her legs, one hand on her throat, and filled her up to the brim again. She wrapped her legs around my hips and stared into my eyes. "Do you trust me?" I whispered. "Yes," she moaned. I tightened my grip on her throat. "I would understand if you didn't. I'm not sure I deserve it right now." "I trust you, Dante." I relaxed and fucked her slow. I kissed her, tasting her lips, and moved my hand away. I found her fingers and interlaced mine through them, sliding in and out. I bit her lip, then fucked her faster, leaning back to look at her body. She kept her legs wide as I released her hand and filled her pussy, making her body bounce, her breasts shake. I teased them over top her shirt, then pushed it up. I leaned forward, licked her nipples, bit them gently, fucked her faster. Sweat dripped down her brow as I took her. I pinned her hands above her head and ground my cock against her, deep inside her pussy, filling her up. She moaned and kissed me, and I bit her again, fucking her harder. Her breasts shook faster, her nipples rock hard, her pussy clenched around my thick cock. I leaned over her, eyes locked on hers, hand still holding her wrists down. Her moans turned into gasps, my name on her lips over and over again. "Dante," she groaned. "Oh, fuck, Dante." I didn't stop. I gave her what she needed, what we both needed. I felt her clenched down and moan, her back arched, her wrists fighting against my hand. I kept her pinned, my cock taking her, and she came hard. Her eyes rolled back, her pale skin flushed. Her pussy clenched hard, and I growled in delight, taking her faster, taking her harder. As her orgasm slowly passed, I released her wrists and grabbed her hips instead. I rolled her legs up and slammed myself inside of her. I growled with pleasure and delight, no longer holding back as I filled her again and again, my body tight and tense, the pleasure building to a peak. I gasped as I came inside her, filling her tight pussy to the brim with my seed, before collapsing onto the bed before her. She laughed softly. We were both sticky with sweat. I could feel every ache and pain again, but for some reason it was distant. "Good morning," she said. "Morning," I grunted. She grinned at me and leaned her chin on one hand. I smiled and looked at her, and she leaned closer to kiss me. I grabbed her hair and pulled her tighter into that kiss, letting it linger for a long moment before letting her go. That was unexpected. "Maybe," I stretched. "But it wouldn't be such a surprise if you knew what I'd been dreaming all last night." She rolled her eyes, then gave me a long look. She bit her lip and pulled the sheet up to her chin. "Are you okay?" she asked. I shrugged. "Fine." "You don't look fine." She tilted her head. "Your face is bruised, and I think there's blood on your bandage." I looked down and cursed. I got out of bed and gingerly peeled the bandage back. Fortunately, the stitches didn't look ripped, and I put the bandage back. "It's fine," I said. She stared at me, her eyes roaming my body. I let her look as I picked up my boxer briefs and slid them on. "Can I expect you to wake me up like that more often?" "Probably," I said. "I'm not good at controlling myself." "I noticed." I smirked at her and stretched again. About last night." "We don't have to talk about it," she said, her voice quiet. She sat up and let the sheet drop. She still wore her t-shirt, but I could see her hard nipples through her shirt. "It's fine. Really, you don't have to say anything." "It was too close," I said. "Twice now, you were almost hurt because of me." "You just wanted to show me a good time." "I get it. We'll have to stay around here. It's safe here, right?" I hesitated. "Safer," I said. "Good. I know it's just the boring suburbs, but hey, it's better than getting shot at." I clenched my jaw. The memory of those goons breaking into the office came back, and my outrage flared again. And I realized something in that moment. I wasn't dead. They hadn't killed me. They'd hurt me, sure, but pain was temporary and I'd heal, and I'd come back stronger. But not if I let them scare me. That was always Vlas's goal, always had been as long as I've known him. He's never been physically powerful, never been good in a fight, but he was smart and vicious. He used fear as a weapon, and it was a weapon that could be just as effective as bullets. Maybe even more. Bullets just killed. Fear controlled. If I let Vlas dictate how I lived, then I'd let him control me too. That couldn't happen. I turned away from Ada and pulled my clothes on. She watched me without speaking until I looked back at her. "Come on, get dressed. We're going out." "Where?" she asked. "We're going to see Sergio. It's been too long since I went there." She frowned and shook her head. "I don't understand." "I'll explain in the car on the way over. Go on, get dressed." I'll wait downstairs." She didn't say anything for a long moment until she sighed and nodded. "Fine, I trust you." "Good." I left her room and shut the door behind me. I wasn't going to let Vlas scare me. The bastard could throw whatever he wanted at me. I'd break him and protect my Ada, no matter what he did. And the first step toward that was to simply live my life the way I wanted to, regardless of what that bastard was willing to do.
20. Ada. We parked down the block from Sergio. Dante wore one of his good suits, his hair pushed back, a little stubble on his chin from the night before. He moved a little gingerly, and I could tell he was still in pain. He probably should have been in bed, not back in the city, but that didn't seem to matter to him. He got out of the car, walked around to my side, and helped me out. Another SUV drove past slowly as we headed down the sidewalk. I didn't recognize the guy driving, but he nodded at Dante, who nodded right back. I stepped over a crack and leaned against him before slipping my hand into his. "So," I said, "you've been quiet, and you said you'd explain." He smiled a little. "I did. Are you going to?" "Yes, but I want Sergio to hear me too." I laughed. "Of course." He squeezed my hand and dropped it as we reached the bakery. He pushed the door open and stepped inside. It wasn't crowded since the place had just opened, but there were a couple young guys sitting at the tables with their MacBooks out. The room smelled like coffee and bread, and a huge smile spread across my face. It felt like I hadn't been there in a long time, and I actually sort of missed it. Dante walked to the counter and leaned against it. A young guy was working this morning, and I didn't recognize him. He was just a kid, dark hair, round baby face, wore jeans and a button-down black shirt tucked in. "You knew?" Dante asked. He nodded. Sergio hired me. I'm Marco, his nephew. Well, I'm his cousin's kid, but I just call him Uncle." "Do you know who I am?" He nodded again, eyes wide. You're Mr. Dante." "Good, but just call me Dante." He smiled at the kid and nodded at me. "That's Ada. You mind getting her a coffee?" "Sure, yeah, no problem." "And whatever else she wants?" He nodded. "Whatever she wants." Dante winked at me, then walked to the doors that led into the kitchen and disappeared through them. I smiled at Marco, and he seemed frozen in place, like the fear wouldn't let him move. "It's okay," I said. "He's not that scary." I laughed a little. "Okay, he's scary, but you're on his side, so you're fine." He nodded twice, then turned away and ran over to the coffee machine. I smiled and leaned over to the counter to watch him. He made the coffee with quick, practiced motions, and I wondered how long ago Sergio had hired him. Probably right after Dante got attacked that morning. Probably needed someone to come in and do the opening stuff that we weren't doing anymore. Poor Sergio. I hadn't thought about him in all this. Marco returned with my coffee, and I took it. "Do you want anything else?" he asked. The pastries are good. Uncle lets me have some after we close since they'll go to waste anyway." "That's okay," I said. "How old are you, Marco?" 16, he said. "That's a good age." "Listen, you're not interested in your uncle's business, are you?" He hesitated. "Baking bread?" I grinned. "Sure, baking bread." "I don't know," he said. "Uncle gets up pretty early." "Baking is a good job. You should learn all you can from him." "I don't know," he said again. "Maybe I could learn from Mr. Dante." I sighed. "Now that's exactly what I want you to avoid, okay?" Before I could do more to warn the kid off, the doors to the kitchen opened and the smell of fresh dough and bread came wafting out. Dante nodded to me and gestured. "Come on," he said. "Thanks for the coffee, Marco." I smiled at him and followed Dante back into the kitchen. Stainless steel tables with wooden tops and gleaming counters greeted me. Sergio was standing at a station toward the back, cutting big chunks out of a larger bit of dough. He rolled the chunks, shaped them in the flour, then put them onto a baking pan. When the pan was full, he set it aside and began the process again. "Good of you two to come visit me," Sergio grunted. "Nice to see you too, Sergio. I'm glad you're still busy." He laughed and didn't look up from what he was doing. His eyes looked tired, and his hair looked like it had more gray in it, but he seemed exactly the same otherwise. His hands moved with a practiced precision, cutting the dough, kneading it, shaping it, and tossing it onto the pan. He didn't slow down, even as he talked. "Always busy," he said. "It's my life now. Get up early, bake bread, go to bed early. Not such a bad way to live, all things considering." He glanced up at Dante, then looked back down at the dough. "Compared to some people, it's downright pleasant." "What have you heard?" Dante asked. "Oh, just the usual. You got shot at, you ended up killing a few men." He slammed a hunk of dough onto the table with a loud, slick slap, then took a deep breath. "And the Russians think you're a fool." Dante laughed a little and shook his head. "Now why the hell would they think that?" "Because you are." Sergio hit the dough hard with his hands and began to shape it, putting his muscle into the motion. "They're walking around with axes, and you keep sticking your neck out, begging them to come and cut off your head." Dante laughed again and shook his head. "That seems dramatic, Sergio." "Isn't it?" He finished shaping the dough and slammed it onto the tray. The whole thing rattled. He sliced off another one, smashed it onto the flour in a big puff of white, and he began to shape it. "Tell me something. Why are you here today, Dante? What do you want?" "I want to talk," he said. "About this, actually." Sergio stopped kneading and slapped the dough hard. "You want to talk about how you're being a fool? Then I'll gladly indulge you." "Sergio," I said, frowning, starting to feel a little nervous. He ignored me. "What are you thinking, starting a war with Vlas? And don't tell me he's the one that began all this. It was your associate that robbed him, and before that, it was your men that pushed against his territory. You've been nagging at him for years, undercutting him on the drug market, pushing his protection racket hard. Oh, it's all been little things, but over time, in aggregate, you've been fucking him hard." I stared at Dante, surprised. I didn't know any of that. From my perspective, this had all come out of nowhere, all because Vlas was a greedy bastard. But now I realized there was a long history here that I didn't know anything about. "That's all true," Dante said, "but it's also true that none of it is worth starting a war over. Even altogether, even if I had done it all at once. Vlas has been doing that petty shit right back at me, and you don't see me out there trying to murder him." "Doesn't matter," Sergio grunted. "You've been through a war before. You know how it goes. Why would you court that?" Dante was quiet for a long moment, then he shook his head. "I'm sorry, Sergio. I'm sorry for what happened to you, and I'm sorry this is happening again. But I'm the capo now, and you know what that means. You understand the responsibility I hold." "I do," Sergio said, his voice calmer. He sliced a piece of dough off and began to shape it. "Vlas tried to kill you after you tried to make things right with him. You can't just turn away from this." Dante nodded once and leaned against the table. I looked around and found a stool. I pulled it out and sat, sipping the coffee. "He did try to kill me last night," Dante said, "and I've been thinking about that. I'm not sure that was a serious attempt. Not really." Sergio frowned. "How's that?" "He sent 3 random thugs," Dante said. 3 guys with no skills, 3 nobodies.
If he really wanted me dead, he would have used his own guys. And I know they never would have gotten into that club, but still, he'd already hired those guys. He didn't know I'd be there that night. They were probably trailing me for days. I blinked in surprise. Wait, really? He shrugged. That's my guess. So what was that then? Sergio asked. I think he's trying to scare me. And sure, if they succeeded, that would have been good. But I think Vlas is trying to fuck with me. That's one hell of a way to fuck with you, I said. Sergio laughed. I agree with her. Of course you do, Dante said, waving him off. She's smart, and we all know it. But the point I'm making is I can't let Vlas scare me. I can't let him do whatever he wants and force me to go into hiding. That'll only show weakness. And so you're here to show that you're not afraid, and you brought her with you to underscore that point. Sergio tossed the last bit of dough onto the pan and slid it over next to the other tray. He shook his head and laughed. That's a fucked up thing to do. Dante laughed, and I stared at the men for a long moment. Wait, I said. I'm just here to prove you're not afraid? That's right, Dante said. It's more than that, though. You're here to show that we're both strong, that you're not making me weaker. That's what he thinks, Ada. He thinks you're a weakness. She is, Sergio said, but it's not a bad weakness. I won't let him exploit it. Dante's fists balled up. I won't let him force my hand. Stop, I said, standing. Stop, hold on. You're just using me to show that you're not afraid, that I'm not a weakness? Ada, he said, shaking his head. It's not just that. I want to have a life. I don't want you locked up in that house forever. Dante, this is insane. We don't need to risk ourselves just to prove a point. That's exactly what you need to do. Sergio sighed and sounded exhausted. He rubbed his temple and left a smear of flour along his cheek. I hate to admit it, but Dante's right about this. Even if this war is fucking stupid, showing fear and weakness would be worse. It would only make Vlas hit you harder. Dante nodded his head. That's right. Sergio, what should I do from here? The old man shook his head. He picked up the first tray, took it to an oven, and slid it inside. He grabbed the second one, slid it in to join the first, and closed the door. He brushed his hands on his white apron and turned to face us, arms crossed over his chest. You're going to have to kill Vlas, or a few of his men, Sergio said. I felt my stomach drop. Wait, how many? Dante asked. Sergio shrugged. As many as you can. Show Vlas that trying to hit you has consequences. You can't let this get out of hand. Kill some of his men, show him you're not going to be pushed around. Dante, all right, he said, standing up straight. He winced slightly, then nodded again. I can do that. Just be careful, Sergio said. What happened to staying out of the war? I asked, my eyes wide. What happened to him being a fool? Sergio shook his head. The boy's a fool, he already knows it, and the war's on. Might as well try and win the damn thing and come out alive. I stared at the men and felt a creeping sense of horror wash over me. Sergio may look like a kind older man, especially covered in flour and wearing an apron, but he was a killer, just like Dante. Together, they had so much blood on their hands, I couldn't even imagine it. I'm getting something to eat, Dante said. Ada, you hungry? I shook my head and sat back on the stool. You can stay back here, Sergio said as he started separating a new hunk of dough. Go on, drink your coffee. Yeah, I said. Dante smirked at me and brushed his fingers over my leg as he walked past and headed out the door. I watched him go and realized that I was still living under the delusion that Dante was somehow not a monster. But he's proven, again and again, that's exactly what he is.
I know what you're thinking, Sergio said, his voice low.
What's that? I felt numb, like my lips would fall off my face.
He cares about you. I've never seen him care about someone like he cares about you.
I nodded and stared at the floor. I believe you, I said.
Good. But you'd better be careful. You've figured out what kind of man Dante is by now, haven't you?
Yes, I whispered.
You seem like a normal girl. Despite your shithead father, you're probably a nice person, right? Never got in trouble, never hurt nobody, right?
Right.
Then take it from me. That's the way to live. There's no glory or honor in the things that we do here. There's nothing beautiful about killing and power. If you want any chance at a normal life, walk away and never, ever look back, because Dante will suck you into his world, and if you let him, you'll never come back out.
I stared at Sergio, not sure what to say. He kept working, never looked up, and his face was completely neutral. But his words shook me down deep, so much so that I had to take a few deep breaths just to keep from breaking down and crying right there on the stool. Because I knew he was right. I was a good person, a normal person, at least before all this. Now the idea of killing people, of men getting killed, of violence and drugs and everything else was becoming normal, or at least not so horrible. All because of Dante, because he was seducing me and drawing me deeper into his world. The worst part was, I wanted it. I wanted to be in his world, wanted to live with him on the edge. It scared me. I could feel it, exactly what Sergio said, hovering at the edges of my awareness. If I kept going, I'd fall into that life forever and never be able to look back. And I didn't know if it was already too late.
21. Dante. We spent the morning at Sergio's bakery. I met with some local folks like I used to, listened to their complaints about rough cops and loud neighbors, promised to fix a few broken sidewalk slabs, that sort of shit. My guys were crawling all over the place, both inside and out, just to make sure we were okay. Around noon, I walked Ada back to the car and started the drive back to the suburbs. "What did you and Sergio talk about?" I asked, trying not to sound too interested. She frowned out the window. I glanced at her, let my eyes run down her pale blue top over her tight black jeans. Her hair was in a tight bun and a few strands hung in curls, framing her face. "Nothing," she said. "Huh." I tilted my head, looking back at the road. "You seemed distant when you got back out." "I did?" She kept staring out the window. "I guess." "Ada." She looked at me and forced a smile. "Yeah?" I frowned at the road in front of me. I could force her to tell me what the old shit said, or I could just let it be. I knew what old habits would have me do. If this were a few years ago, I would have demanded she told me what went on in there. But I knew that wouldn't do a damned thing. It wouldn't help if I forced her into talking, especially not when she didn't want to talk. So I let it drop. "Nothing. Never mind." She turned and stared back out the window. I let out a breath and drove. I could still feel her legs wrapped around my hips, feel her breath in my ear as my cock plunged deep inside of her. I didn't want to let it bother me so much, but it did anyway. I wanted to know why she seemed like her conversation with Sergio didn't go all that well. But I managed to make it back to the house, park out front, and walk her up the steps without saying a word. She stepped in through the door, but I didn't follow. "You're not staying?" she asked, and a glimmer of the Ada from just a few hours resurfaced. "Got some work to do," I said. "Right." She looked away and seemed to shut down. I guess I can expect Gino. He should be inside already. Good. Okay. She let out a breath. Ada, I said and stepped toward her. She turned and tilted her head. It's fine, Dante. Go do what you have to do. If you're scared... I am scared, she said, anger flashing into her voice. I'm petrified. And you're still dragging me around like I'm some prop. Some fucking prop to prove you're a man and you're not scared. I narrowed my eyes. It's not like that. Isn't it? You just want me to get used to your world. But living like I'm about to die all the time isn't my kind of life, okay? I stared, surprised, and took a step back. What the hell are you talking about? You know what I'm talking about. Her fingers pressed against the door's frame, her knuckles turning white. You shouldn't have brought me out with you this morning. You shouldn't have... Oh, shit. She blinked away some angry tears, wiping them off her face with a hard gesture. I wasn't trying to upset you, I said. And you still did it anyway. I'm not a prop, Dante, and I don't want to get used to all this killing. I stared into her eyes for a long moment, and my face hardened. I wanted to argue, wanted to explain. I was doing this for her as much as for me. I needed Vlas to know that she wasn't a weakness, and that way she wouldn't be in as much danger. She wouldn't be a direct target. I needed her to know that she was my top priority. She was the thing I was fighting for. Even if she wasn't in my life, Vlas would come for her. That was her father's doing, not mine. I was only trying to keep her alive. But the words died on my lips. I couldn't manage to find them. My phone began to ring, a shrill scream from my pocket. She shook her head, tears falling again. You should get that. Ada. She shut the door in my face. I stood there, seething with anger, then tore the phone from my pocket. What the fuck do you want? I growled. It's me, Steven said. And what the fuck do you want? We know where Vlas is. I turned away from the door, frowning down at the steps. I was so angry with myself, but Steven's words cut through the rage. Where? He has a meeting with the Jalisco cartel. One of our informants in their ranks sent me a text. They're meeting about a shipment this afternoon. Fuck, I said. Where? Deep south, down by the docks. This empty parking lot at the edge of the city. Quiet spot. Not a lot around. He hesitated for a second. But it's near the park. I took a deep breath to calm myself. I closed my eyes and forced myself to focus on this moment, on this decision. Gather everyone, I said. I want 4 cars packed with guns. We're hitting them hard. If we kill any Jalisco in the crossfire, he started, but I interrupted him. Fuck the Jalisco. Tell our informant our plans. Tell them to drop as soon as they see us coming. They won't like it, Dante. They want this deal. Tell them I'll pay 50% more than Vlas for whatever the fuck they have. He let out a breath. Understood. Should we run this past Don Leone? No, I said. Not enough time. Get it set up. I will. He hung up and I lingered on the porch. I could go inside. I could go in and talk to Ada, explain to her what I'm doing, why I'm doing it. Maybe she'd understand. Maybe she'd even forgive me. But I can't let this opportunity pass. Vlas didn't know we had a man in the Jalisco cartel. Nobody did. I met him through a personal friend and was paying him from my own personal pocket. Not even Don Leone knew about him. This was my shot. This was my opportunity to hit Vlas back hard for the shit he tried on me. I walked down the steps toward my car and refused to look back at the house. The sunshine slanted at sharp angles through the trees and cast light and shadows across the dash of my car. I stared straight ahead at the run-down gravel road, tire tracks bitten deep into the earth, and took deep, calming breaths. Steven sat in the passenger side, a submachine gun in his lap. He checked the magazine and pulled back the slide before letting out a deep breath. Good afternoon for it, he said. I snorted. Perfect day for killing. Stephen gave me one of his rare smiles. In the back, Biagio and Gino laughed, both of them nervously holding their weapons. The other car was parked just behind ours, engine rumbling. I checked the rear view and saw Cosimo and Ryan sitting up front. I knew Chad and John were in the back, and all four of them were armed to the fucking teeth. Half my best muscle was there and ready to get revenge for all the shit Vlas had put us through these last couple of weeks. Ahead, the road turned around a bend and disappeared beyond the forest. I knew it headed up a short hill and ended at the parking lot where Vlas and the Jalisco were having their meeting. I checked my watch and gripped the steering wheel, my stomach doing flips. Just another minute, and it was time. We'd been stalked out for a couple of painful hours, in position before the Russians arrived to avoid getting caught, and now it was finally almost time. This could be a trap. Stephen said it so calmly that I thought he wasn't even talking to me. I grunted in return. Could be. Might be a bad idea to go through with this. Might be, but we are. He nodded. I know, we have to. Chance to hit Vlas like this doesn't come around twice. The motherfucker. What I don't get is why he'd start some new deal with the Jalisco cartel when he's in the middle of a war with me. Like this wouldn't split his attention? Those cartel guys are no joke. I know, Stephen said. I don't know what he's planning, but it's something big. He wouldn't bring the Jalisco into this if he had other options or just some small-scale shit. This is going to be big, Dante. It was, I corrected. Now it's about to blow up in his fucking face.